This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
It's time for Place to Be Nation's Year in Pop. Each episode, we go back in time to a year in the past and take a trip down memory lane and see what was going on in the worlds of news, sports, and pop culture with your hosts, Andy Atherton and Scott Criscuolo.
Place to Be Nation, welcome back to another great episode of the Year in Pop. I am your co-host, Andy Atherton. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight, we're right in that sweet spot still that we love so much, the mid to late 80s, with another banner year for a lot of great stuff, a lot of personal things for this panel, what we'll get into tonight, because we're really into the memories are getting clearer and clearer, and this is a very clear year for all of us. But before we talk about it, let's get the rest of the crew on the way. Let me get my co-host in here. He is the I stumbled for a second. PTBN Podfather, Scott Criscuolo. Scott, how are you tonight?
I'm well, Mr. Atherton. I thought you were going to call me the prepubescent. I'm like, well, I was kind of prepubescent the year that we did this, but I think pubesity was kicking in by this year for me. So anyway. Mr. Atherton, always a pleasure. Yes, hello everyone. Welcome to the Year in Pop. And yes, we are in that sweet spot of the late 80s where everything is very clear. I remember all of the big events that we're going to talk about in this year tonight. I remember very vividly. I remember where I was for almost all of them. But we'll talk about it. Let's bring the guys in. Let's bring in first. He is my compadre on the NWA Saturday Special. He is tri-host of NWA Crock and Roll. He's also been a frequent guest on other great things. The Doctor, Dr. G, George Ribellino. Was this kind of this kind of your sockless mullet time? Your Crockett Tubbs era still in the year that we're talking about?
Oh, no doubt.
White pants. You had white pants.
Got a lot of memories in this year.
Yes,
especially for football.
I concur. We will talk plenty of football today. Baseball, sports in '86. Andy, let's finish off our quartet.
Joining us, this man needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. You can hear him on many shows across many feeds. Most importantly, though, the shows he co-hosts over on the North-South Connection. That is the Extreme Three-Way Dance with Justin and Jenny, as well as This Week in the NFL with the Cowboy and Cowboy Senior, Jay, Arsenio, D'Amato. Johnny, how you doing, man?
Good evening, my fellow old folks. Good evening. My favorite time in a month. Isn't that special? Glad to be here.
Well,
it's always a pleasure.
Nice pull there. Yes, we're talking about the year 1986, the year I actually graduated from 8th grade. Like we said, formative year. We're going to get to a lot of the tremendous events and in all the walks of life. This is a very balanced episode, I think. I think there's a little bit for everybody, whether you're a sports fan, a music, movies, current events. If you're into history, you're going to enjoy this episode as always. But let's start off, kind of just paint the picture. Not a lot of changes happened between this and 1985, though, in terms of where the cost of living was. Your average new house was $89,430. Your average income was $22,400. Average monthly rent $385. The average cost of a new car just over $9,000 at $9,225. Gas dropped though to 89 cents a gallon. That is just insane. And the inflation rate dropped also to 1.91%. Popular toys that the kids were playing with, we were all a little too old for some of this stuff, but some of the things like Centurion action figures, the Double Deuce Castle set, Gem was a big thing for the little girls. Here's one that I didn't have, but I knew I had friends of mine who had little brothers and sisters that had these because these damn commercials got stuck in your head when you would hear them. My Buddy and Kid Sister. I don't know if you guys remember My Buddy. Basically, buy a friend for your kid.
Gee, that's one of your favorite fucking It's one of your favorite things that get stuck in your head. My buddy and me.
Well, I used to make fun of that commercial all the time.
Scotty wants to throw me out of a tree. Yeah, I know. You used to sing that to me. I know.
Yeah, and then my buddy was around for a while, and then they were like, no, we want to have a girl one. So then it was kid, sister. Yeah, there was those commercials just whenever they came on, I'd try to change the channel. We also had My Pet Monster, NFL Huddles, Photon Warriors. Laser tag was starting to become big about this time. They had the Popple's Playhouse, Teddy Ruxpin, which was kind of creepy.
I had one of those. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't. No, I didn't have
I remember Robin Williams famously talked about that in one of his routines. He's like, Teddy Ruxpin, that thing that talks to your kids. You're afraid, like when you go to bed at night, it'll go there. You must kill mommy and daddy. We're gonna show you how. It comes to life. Like right now, they have like Five Nights at Freddy's. That's what I guess that's what that would be the equivalent to.
Right.
That the kids play. So in the arcades, though, we were playing Ikari Warriors, Bubble Bobble, Rolling Thunder, and Outrun were our new games. Outrun was a lot of fun. That was a racing game. It was I believe it was a stand-up one. Now you didn't sit in that one. The big deal, and this was actually kind of cool at the time, was you got to change the radio. It had different radio stations on it.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah,
and you had that girl. You were in the convertible. It was you and a woman. I had it on I think I had it on Nintendo, where I did play it in the arcade, though. Driving games are always way more fun in the arcade. And on the console, probably one of the biggest games in history, on a Nintendo Entertainment System, The Legend of Zelda. Now, I'm personally not a big Zelda fan. It's not for any reason. I just never got into it. Never played it. My kids do play it, the modern versions. Scott, did you play Legend of Zelda?
I did indeed play Legend of Zelda, and I played the sequel too. I loved Zelda. It was a fun game. If you were lucky and you got the gold, because you can get the regular game that was just the gray Nintendo case, or you can get the special Zelda with the gold case and the gold game. That was kind of badass. But yeah, I played Zelda. I absolutely played Zelda. I want to backtrack very quickly. I actually did get laser tag for Christmas that year.
Oh, nice.
So I did play laser tag. We had a bunch of us did, and a bunch of us was the beginning of my 8th grade. That was in the middle of my 8th grade. So a bunch of us got, we all kind of, because I only had 11 boys in my class. I had 30 kids in my 8th grade. So all of us got asked for laser tag, and almost all of us got it for Christmas. So we spent that whole winter just zapping each other all over school. So it was very cool. It's a highlight for me in 8th grade.
That's very cool. Yeah. That actually, if you have that gold cartridge, that's probably worth a crap ton of money these days on eBay.
Oh, I'm sure. I don't know if it's worth anything open. If you have it closed, like sealed, it's probably a fuck ton.
Oh, Jesus, it's holy grail right there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Also coming out, there was Metroid, Kid Icarus, and Adventure Island. And finally, the Atari 7800 is released. I remember playing, I think, twice. I knew like one person who had a 7800. It was the Atari's last gasp, basically. It came out like, I think, 2 years late. Yeah, it was too little too late for that company. Also, though, in pop culture, the Oprah Winfrey Show debuted nationally during September that year. That show became a phenomenon because of her syndication deal. It was the highest rated talk show in the U.S. for a time, aired for 25 seasons, won 45 daytime Emmys. And the Oprah Winfrey Show made over 4,500 episodes before it ended in 2011. Here's another thing, and actually was referenced in a movie that came out, I think it was last year. The large public charity event Hands Across America is held in May of 1986. The publicity campaign asked Americans to join hands in a human chain across the country. Those who participated were asked for a $10 donation to get a place in line. Approximately 6.5 million people participated. Did any of you guys do Hands Across America participate?
No, I didn't.
I remember it.
Yeah, I remember it. And of course, there was an awesome Goldberg's episode of that too. But I kind of remember it. Johnny, do you remember it?
I participated in Hands Across My Schwanz.
Well, 1986 was about that time, right?
Yeah, I actually, I didn't do it, but I reserved the spot. I signed up, and they sent me the note and told me where my spot was, and I just never went.
That might be a new pod. Oh God, that was good. That was a good one, Johnny.
You served up a meatball.
There you go. Yeah, that one went into the Mets bullpen. There you go. Hit the apple.
That was a Diaz slider, a hanging slider.
Go ahead, Andy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, like, I actually did sign up, and I never went. I was like 13 at the time, so what did I know?
I think I think here in Connecticut, I think it was over like the main, like New Haven did it. I'm guessing probably like Hartford, I wouldn't want to hold hands with anybody in Bridgeport. Probably Stamford. I'm sure like the big cities in Connecticut probably.
Well, I don't know if it was in multiple cities. I think it was like literally supposed to be like one line through the country, I think. I'm not sure if it was like just holding hands wherever. I don't know. But I don't know if you guys saw Us, that Jordan Peele movie that came out. I think it was last year. Was it last year or the year before? Where they actually made that a plot point in the movie. No? Scott, you didn't see it?
Which one?
Us.
No, I didn't see Us, actually.
Okay. Oh, spoilers. Anyway, so yeah, Hands Across America plays into the plot in that movie. All right. So anyway, Andrew Lloyd Webber, stage musical adaptation of Phantom of the Opera, had his West End debut. It proved to be incredibly popular, won Musical of the Year. That is a great show. I don't know if you haven't had a chance to see it, make sure you do. Studio Ghibli came out for the first time, as well as Pixar Animation Studios was founded that year. A full survey came out. It was carried out in Loch Ness, hoping to find proof that Nessie exists. They said no proof was found. Any of you guys believe that the Loch Ness Monster is real or exists, or you think that's all hokum?
I think it exists.
Yeah, so do I, actually.
I definitely think there is. I know Dr. G. He doesn't believe in any of that. No. Mumbo jumbo nonsense.
What,
it's not Art Bell over here.
Didn't he show up in, what was it, Halloween Havoc? Or, come on. WCW guys.
See, he does exist.
What was it?
Hey,
Halloween
WCW.
Havoc? What year?
95.
Yeah, it's good cross promotion for our WCW shows.
That's right. Yes. Halloween Havoc 95. Yep.
There you go. Okay. Also, notable deaths that year. We lost Donna Reed, who was one of our sitcom moms from the 50s. The founder of Dianetics and Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, he'd be disgusted if what he saw now of his fucking religion.
George O'Keeffe, the famous painter. A bunch of actors. James Cagney, Otto Preminger, Broderick Crawford, Marlon Perkins, who was the host of the Wild Kingdom.
Mutual of Omaha.
Kate Smith, the singer. Here's somebody who we lost really early and kind of suddenly, Ted Knight. Great comedic actor. He would have done so much more, too.
Yeah, that's a heartbreaker, because at the time, he was still doing Too Close for Comfort. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I think it kind of... Gee, you and I were talking about this the other day, because it's on Pluto. There's one of the comedy... I think it's the TV comedy channel on Pluto. They run a lot of Too Close for Comfort, and I think towards the tail end they called it the Ted Knight Show. But pretty much by then he had colon cancer, and I mean, greatest straight man ever. To me, like I know a lot of people, older people remember him as Ted Baxter, but as for those that know me way too well, he'll always be Judge Smales. Well, we're waiting.
How about a Fresca?
Porterhouse! It's a brown Audi part of my parking space. Go call the tow truck and have it hauled away immediately. Right away, Judge. Right away. Okay, we can do the whole movie. But anyway, Judge Smales. That's Ted Knight for me.
Mm-hmm. A little song, a little dance, a little seltzer down your pants. A great, actor, comedic actor, and, remarkably, a very good voice actor. Scatman Crothers. You heard him in a lot of, Disney movies. Desi Arnaz also passed away. Cary Grant, one of the great actors from the golden age of Hollywood. We also lost Tenzing Norgay, was one of the first men to climb Mount Everest. All right, so notable births that year. Amber Heard, Robert Pattinson, Shia LaBeouf, Megan Fox, Lindsay Lohan, Amanda Bynes, Armie Hammer. And music, we had Lady Gaga, Ellie Goulding, Usain Bolt, Rafael Nadal, Marshawn Lynch, Clay Matthews. And in wrestling, we had Seth Rollins, Charlotte Flair, Xavier Woods, and Biggie of The New Day, Jinder Mahal, Kalisto, Matt Riddle, Alicia Fox, Mustafa Ali, and Nick Aldis, all born in 1986. And with that, though, we're going to move on to sports. And Scott Criscuolo.
Thank you, Andy. And Charlotte Flair was born in 1986, but her boobs were born 25 years later. Anyway.
There's going to be one of those episodes tonight.
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's fun.
That's the one joke. Now, sports, 1986. Oh, boy. Gentlemen, I've been waiting for this for a very, very long time. Major League Baseball. The Hall of Fame. Only one was voted in on the regular committee, and that was a guy whose jersey I'd love to own, but I can't find it. And that is one of the unheralded giants of his era. Obviously, he was in the shadow of the Say Hey Kid, but arguably one of the greatest sluggers of all time, the great Willie McCovey, who we just lost a couple years ago, I think, in the Hall of Fame in 1986. And the Veterans Committee, Ernie Lombardi, the Schnoz, and Bobby Doerr, legendary Red Sox infielder. Your division winners, the Red Sox, another great year for the Yankees, but another great year that they finished in second place. The Red Sox won the division for the first time in 11 years since their trip to the World Series in 1975. The California Angels, who had a pretty good 80s. Remember, they won the division in 79, and then the Yankees said they'd had enough of Reggie's nonsense, and he signed with the Angels in 82. They won the division that year, and they won it again here in 86. After 2 years, Mr. D'Amato, of getting kicked in the balls for every August and September, finally, there was no August and September. 108-54, the New York Mets won the National League East for the first time since 1973. Everybody hated us, and I didn't fucking care. And the Houston Astros won the West. Also pretty successful in the 80s. They won the division a couple times. Had a good series with the Dodgers in 1980. We'll get to the playoffs in a second. Your individual winners, Roger Clemens in the American League, as he began his ascent to greatness. 24, he had pretty much the same numbers Doc did the year before, 24 wins, ton of shutouts, ton of strikeouts. Michael Jack Schmidt won another National League MVP, Mr. Consistency at third base for the Phillies. Clemens also won the Cy Young Award for the American League, and Mike Scott won the Cy Young in the National League. Your Rookie of the Year, a guy we'll talk about a lot over the next several years in sports, Mr. Jose Canseco, as the Oakland A's started beginning their ascent out west. And your National League Rookie of the Year, which is funny because he actually pitched in the World Series the year before but didn't pitch in enough games to be considered a rookie, Todd Worrell, the closer for the St. Louis Cardinals, who, of course, was involved in that infamous play with Don Denkinger in Game 6 the year before in the World Series. Which is funny. I thought he pitched all year. 36 saves that year. That's funny that he was Rookie of the Year. I would have assumed if the guy had 36 saves, he pitched enough in 85 to be considered a rookie. It's kind of funny. But anyway, he won the Rookie of the Year in the National League. And now the playoffs. And I remember I think MLB Network did a documentary, because this is probably – and, I mean, it's hard to say now because a lot of postseasons, particularly in this decade or in this past decade, have kind of, gone in and out. But this might be the best postseason in Major League history. You had 3 series, 2 went 7, 1 went 6, but just epic moments up and down. We'll start in the American League. The Red Sox and Angels played an epic 7-game series, and then on that infamous Sunday afternoon out in Anaheim in Game 5 with the Red Sox down 3-1 and down, I think, 4-2 in the 9th inning, Donnie Moore threw a sad sack slider to Dave Henderson, who had come in midseason in a trade with the Mariners. I remember that because Dave Henderson was one of Roger Clemens' 20 strikeouts back in April when he did that. I just watched that game actually on YouTube recently. And Hindu knocked it out. Forced extra innings. Red Sox won. They went back to Boston, and the Angels got blown out in back-to-back games, and the Red Sox won their first pennant in 11 years. Now, Dr. G, we all know that you probably didn't watch a minute of any of this postseason in 1986, but were you at least rooting for the Angels?
What do you think?
I think you didn't give a shit.
I didn't think you were going to let us talk. I was
building. I was building.
I figured you were
Don't you understand about building for the moment?
This is your joy. This is your chance right here to
I'm
enjoy it all.
building the moment. It's called building the moment. God, you're like 2020 WWE. You're building the moment till we get to the moment. And
Gee, we'll have you back on Year Pop 2000. Don't worry.
In 96 and 90. Although John isn't, he say no because none of those fucking scumbags. But anyway. But yeah, what an epic series.
I wanted the Red Sox to lose. I want the Red Sox to lose anytime. I
That's
even
true.
rooted for the Mets in the World Series. So
The Mets were in the World Series?
So did I. I was rooting for the Mets, too.
So anyway, the Angels win in the Red Sox win in 7. And Gene Mauch, who historically was always a bridesmaid, never a bride, blew his chance to go to the World Series yet again. He did it in 64 with the Phillies, too. Meanwhile, Mr. D'Amato, on the other side of the ledger, you and I had to suffer through 7 days of fucking hell against an Astros team that I always thought was clearly inferior to us. But you know what? Doc lost the first of many 1-0 games in his postseason career as they lost Game 1, 1-0. Do you remember, Johnny, who hit the home run in that Game 1?
Glenn Davis.
Glenn Davis, who I think led the team in homers for Houston. Bobby Ojeda beat Nolan Ryan in Game 2. And then my first epic moment on a Saturday afternoon at Shea, I was at the library. Yes, me, library. I know. Probably thinking, yeah, right. I was at the library doing a project.
What are you picking up there?
Exactly, yeah, the librarian. What do you have behind the desk, dear?
I'd like to do your Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah. Would you like to shuffle my card catalog? We were listening to it on the radio, and Lenny Dykstra, Johnny, with the walk-off off Dave Smith in the... Did you notice that every Astros reliever looked like he was 75 years old? It was just crazy. Charlie Kerfeld, Dave Smith, Aurelio Lopez, like all these fucking guys look like they were 90. I guess everybody looked 90 back then. Anyway, Lenny Dykstra hit the walk-off, and the Mets won Game 3, 6-5. The next night, of course, that fucking scumbag Mike Scott scuffed his way to a 3-1 win. Even Keith Hernandez, who used to look at the ball, he said there was a little cut near the stitches, but of course everybody hated us in '86, so they weren't going to give us the benefit of the doubt. So in Game 5, that Monday, with the series tied, one of the best pitching duels I ever watched. You remember, Johnny, Doc and Nolan Ryan literally threw peas for 10 innings. Doc
went 10 innings, yeah.
Yep, Doc went 10, Noli went 9, and then the kid... God rest his soul. The kid, Gary Carter, who had a miserable postseason. I think he was like 1 for 14 at that point or something. Hits a 2-run, an RBI single in the bottom of the 11th, and the Mets won 2-1 to go up 3-2 in this series. And then Game 6, the first of 2 Game 6s we'll discuss. It was Bob Ojeda against Bob Nepper. The Mets absolutely had to win this game because it was going to be Ron Darling against that cheating scumbag Mike Scott in Game 7, and we had to win this game. Well, Bobby O gave up 3 runs in the first inning. I was in soccer practice getting heckled by Red Sox fans, and went home dejected, did my homework, and then, of course, the first of what many miracles would be in the postseason, 3 runs in the 9th to tie the game, and then Darryl... I think drove in a run in the 12th, I think, to make it 4-3. And then Billy Hatcher, that little tubby shit, hits a ball off the foul pole to tie the game at 4. The Mets score 3 in the 16th to make it 7-4. Bobby Ojeda, Jesse Orozco, who looked like he was going to faint, gave up 2 runs. And then, who did he strike out, Johnny, to win the game?
Kevin Bass.
The ever dangerous Kevin Bass. Do you remember the story, Johnny? Gary Carter walks up to Jesse and says, if you throw another fucking fastball, I'm going to kill you. He said it was one of the few times he ever heard Gary Carter swear.
Hernandez said it.
Oh, it was Keith?
Gary
Okay.
Carter,
I thought it was, yeah. I was going to say the kid wouldn't swear. Keith said, if you throw another fastball, I'm going to fucking kill you. So he threw him one slider, junk ball after another. And I threw my history book in the air, broke something, and the Mets were National League champions. So the 1986 World Series, the anti-Ribellino series, he was picketing outside. He was picketing outside his Tamarack house. Fuck baseball. Fuck baseball.
George, was there a World Series in '86?
That is my worst nightmare. You know that.
Your dad put money on the Mets, didn't he? Just to piss you off, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Anyway, we should
He
say
had to get under
Donnie.
my skin, even though he was a Yankee fan, he used to sing the "Meet the Mets" song to me and everything, just to aggravate me. Yeah.
Oh God, that's tremendous. And again, we had 7 amazing games. Game 1, Doc lost. No, Doc didn't pitch. It was Ron Darling and Bruce Hurst. Another 1-0 loss. This time because of a ball that went through Tim Tuffle's legs. Johnny, if you remember that.
Yep.
And 1-0. An error lost a game. Keep that in mind.
Well, that they didn't get any hits.
No, Bruce Hurst was amazing.
Didn't get any runs. Yeah.
Yeah, Bruce Hurst was amazing in that series. Typical, something the Mets would suffer with for the next 5 or 6 years, losing to lefties, and they lost 1-0. The next night, the big, highly anticipated Doc versus Clemens didn't transpire. Both guys kind of got smacked around. Doc got smacked around more. I think the Red Sox had 19 or 20 hits in that game, and they won Game 2 9-3. So the Mets were down 2-0, lost both games at home. And Davey Johnson, one of my favorite managers, Johnny, of all time, did one of the greatest things ever. He gave them, in the immortal words of Shawn Michaels to Sid, he gave them the night off and said, sit, go to the hotel in Boston, and relax. We're too tight. They took the night off, no workout. And then in Game 3 that Tuesday in Boston, everything changed. Lenny Dykstra came up against coked-up oil can Boyd and whacked one over the fence, and that was that. The Mets won Game 3 7-1. Ron Darling came out for Game 4. Gary Carter hit 2 balls over the monster. They won Game 4 6-2. Incidentally, John, do you remember earlier that year the Mets and Red Sox played an exhibition game for the Jimmy Fund? I don't know if you remember this or not. I think it was in late August or something. Might have been Labor Day weekend. The Mets and Red Sox played an exhibition game at Fenway to raise money for the Jimmy Fund. For those that don't know, that don't live in the Northeast, the Jimmy Fund is a Boston-based fund for childhood cancer, and they've been doing it for decades. And so they did an exhibition game for the Jimmy Fund, and so everyone thought, oh, Gary Carter's getting used to whacking the Green Monster because maybe he'll do it when it counts. Sure enough, he did. Hit 2 over the fence. Bruce Hurst came back in Game 5, beat the Mets 4-2. So we went to Game 6, Saturday night, October 25th. Down 3-2. Clemens against Bobby O. And Johnny, Andy, Dr. G, this is a night that I will never forget as a sports fan for the rest of my life. You want to talk about the ups and downs. Red Sox take the lead, Mets tie it. Red Sox take the lead, Mets tie it. Mets had a chance to win the game, didn't. If you remember, Johnny, Howard Johnson was supposed to bunt. He didn't. Struck out in the 9th. We had 2 guys on in the 8th, didn't score. Had 2 guys on in the 9th, didn't score. Do you remember where you were, Johnny, during this game?
Oh yeah, I was just home miserable by myself watching it. I remember one of those times, especially the one when Davey neglected to have Howard Johnson bunt. When after they failed to score, the Vin Scully won a little extra and was bitching about it. He said stupid Davey Johnson or something.
Yeah.
They called a brief few seconds of it because he didn't know that they weren't off the air, and he had. Yeah, it didn't come across exactly what he said, but he was he was definitely yelling at Davey Johnson.
Yep. And then in the 10th, Rick Aguilera's in. Andy, I'm not even going to bother asking Dr. G. Andy, were you watching this game?
I was. We're huge Yankee fans, but we're also baseball fans. My dad always watched the World Series. He was probably, I think he was rooting for the Mets. He hates the Red Sox. To me, the Mets are like the Jets, or they're we're not.
Tongue.
No. As in my fandom, as a Yankee fan and Giant fan, they don't really affect me because we're not in the same conference. Now, the Scumbag Islanders, yes, they affect me because they're in the same division as the Rangers. But, at the time, I hadn't been a bitter human being at all. I was only 13. So I was like, yeah, New York, go ahead, go Mets. Yeah, I remember watching that game. It was a lot of fun. It was exciting, too. I mean, even just to be a baseball fan, you didn't have to be a Mets fan to be, invested in that game because it was something.
I'm going to ask it to you this way, Doctor. Did your dad make you watch the game?
He didn't make me watch the game. I watched the games. I always watched the World Series. I remember watching, back in the 80s, when the Twins won. That was kind of exciting in 87. We always watched the World Series. So
what was the lesser of two evils?
Yeah, it was. I don't remember being as crazy about it. First of all, Mets fans hate the Yankees more than Yankee fans hate the Mets. To be honest with you, so I don't like Andy said. You guys were in another league. We didn't. The dream was always to play the Subway Series against each other, but honestly, the Red Sox were always our biggest rivals.
Yeah, and I never. Well, we'll talk about that, the fandom part, in a minute. But anyway. I was sitting in my parents' bedroom. They had company that night. Their friends from up the street, families we were close with, came over, and they were Red Sox fans. So I was, it was a little tense.
Your mom let your dad watch the game, in other words?
No, please, no. They were quote entertaining. They were making whiskey sours. I think they had the game on, but I was a Met fan. Nope, I had to be in my own room. I'm not sitting in a room with Red Sox fans. And then in the 10th inning, despair. Rick Aguilera threw a flat fastball. And I can't even call him fucking scumbag because he only did it this one time. But Dave Henderson hits it over the wall. Actually, he hit the numbers, but he technically hit it over the wall, and the Red Sox took a 4-3 lead. Then Boggs and Barrett got a couple hits, another run, and it was 5-3 going to the 10th. And we had the middle of the order. We had Wally, Keith, and the kid up. And Wally hit a little pope shot to left. Jim Rice caught it. And then Keith hit a bomb to center, but right at the lip of the warning track, and Hindu caught it. And there's that shot of Keith walking back to the dugout, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I don't know about you, Johnny. I started to cry. Not going to lie. I literally started to cry for two reasons. Number one, I didn't want to lose. And B, I knew Monday when I went to school, the Red Sox fans were going to get in my face because they won. The Yankee fans were going to get in my face because they were going to say you fucked up and let them win. Thanks for blowing it. So I was literally hoping to, literally blow my brains out if we lost this fucking game. Because I was not going to win the next when I went to school on Monday. So I started to cry, not going to lie. Then the kid came up, got a hit. I went, okay, a hit. Then cupless Kevin Mitchell had his fucking schwanz hanging down to his knee because he didn't have a cup on because he was already booking his flight home to San Diego. Comes up and hits a garbage Calvin Schiraldi curveball into center for a base hit. And then I'm like, oh, but I was still crying. And then Ray Knight came up, and he would foul off pitch after pitch, and then he'd hit a low fastball into center, base hit. The kid scores. It's now 5-4. Then I had a ray of hope because my favorite player came up. And at the time, even though I loved Doc, my favorite player as a kid was always Mookie Wilson. I always loved Mookie. Probably because when I had my 1982 sticker book, top sticker book, he was the gold sticker. Probably because 1982, he was the only good guy on the team. So, and I was like, oh, could Mookie hit like a 3-run homer, or would he strike out? Who knows? Anyway, it was still 5-4. And that at bat. And then Calvin Schiraldi.
Stanley came in. Stanley
Calvin Schiraldi came out. In came Bob Stanley, another guy who looked like he was 95 years old. And I remember Vin Scully saying he had among pitches a palm ball. And I said to myself, Jesus, another guy that cheats? Because I'd never heard of a palm ball. I'm like, yeah, Mike Scott's scuffing, and this guy throwing palm balls with Ed Harris Vagisil on his hand. I'm like, fucking A. Can we ever get a guy that just throws fastballs? Anyway, Mookie hit foul ball after foul ball after foul ball after foul ball. And then the most amazing 9 minutes in my life as a baseball fan. And probably Johnny's too. Bob Stanley throws a ball inside. I thought Mookie would get hit, jumped out of the way, and it's a pass ball, not a wild pitch, because the ball was in Rich Gedman's glove. Ball goes to the backstop. In comes Kevin Mitchell from third.
Yeah, comes Kevin Mitchell. It took him forever.
I know, Jesus.
I don't think he saw it. He definitely didn't see it right away because it seemed like it took him forever to cross the plate. I thought he was going back to second base or something. He had a heart attack.
He scores. The game's tied. I literally run into the living room and dance all around the living room in front of my parents' company who are Red Sox fans. My dad starts laughing his ass off. I go back in the living room. I go back in the bedroom. I'm like, good luck. Now we can't lose. The only problem was I was a little nervous because even if they got out of this inning, the meat of the Red Sox was coming.
And Doug Sisk was coming.
Yeah, Doug Sisk was warming up. I'm like, oh, Christ. But then I remember that I think Buckner ended the inning, so it was Rice, Dewey, and Gedman in the 11th. I'm like, we don't want those bats up again. Not against Doug fucking Sisk. And Didn't matter. Little dribbler up along first. I thought Mookie was going to run. I thought Buckner would get it, try to leg it out. I had a feeling Mookie would beat it to the bag, but it didn't matter. Ball goes under his glove. Ray Knight scores. We're going to Game 7. I got up in my pajamas, literally ran down the hall, and this is what, 1:45 in the morning in the Northeast. Yep. Ran down the hall, ran out my back door, and ran around the block. In my fucking pajamas. My mother's like, I hopped over the dishwasher. What's that?
Yeah, there's footy pajamas on.
I had my feety pajamas. No, not feety pajamas. I was 13. I wasn't 4. although I wouldn't mind feety pajamas. If
Come
it was
on.
Mets
This is you.
I know, it is me. Greatest American Hero cape. I couldn't. Johnny, I mean, what the fuck? What do you do?
But a great call by Scully. Behind the bag, it gets by Buckner. And here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
I was
very simple. But when he does that behind the bag, and then it was like he couldn't believe it.
And then later on that night, I put on the fan to listen to the Murph, and I remember Gary Thorne saying, "And the Red Sox in stunned disbelief." Dr. G, what were you thinking? You're like, yeah, I knew. You probably thought I knew it was coming.
I was happy. I mean, I love watching the Red Sox lose. It's probably the biggest joy of my life.
Yeah,
lose.
Just an amazing
watching
baseball
that city
moment.
lose. Unfortunately, they don't play late these days, but just
Back
watching
then
that city lose just is a joy in my life.
Well, the next night I had so we had Game 7, but then it got rained out. I remember I had a Halloween party. Girl in my class had a Halloween party, so I had other things to attend to.
It poured. It was supposed to be Oil Ken was supposed to pitch that night.
Yep.
So it poured, and then it looked like okay, the Red Sox got a chance to forget about it, and also they had a chance to bring back Bruce Hurst.
Yep.
3 days rest on the Monday night.
Yep. And sure enough, Ron Darling pitched, struggled, Dewey homered, Gedman homered. I think it was back-to-back. And the Red Sox jumped 3-0. And then one of the greatest relief appearances ever.
El Cid.
Comes in, 2 1/3.
Fattest ass in the history of Major League Baseball. Number 50. Had a
Fattest
50-inch ass.
Fattest ass and the fattest fastball, because 2 1/3 innings, no hits, 5 strikeouts, got us back in the game. Keith triples in 2 runs, and then when the game was tied, Ray Knight, who ended up being the series MVP, hits one over the fence for a home run. Another fucking choke job by Calvin Scumbag Schiraldi, the loser he is. The Mets end up scoring 8
the
runs.
poor bastard, though. The Red Sox didn't have hardly anybody in the bullpen. McNamara brought him in like the 7th inning after he blew it a couple nights before, so they didn't really have anybody.
They really didn't have any. They have Crawford, and they didn't even have like a ton of rookies.
Yeah, Al Nipper came in. That was when Strawberry tacked on that one off.
And then Al Nipper threw at him in the fucking preseason or in spring training the following year. But and then Jesse Orosco struck out Marty Barrett, who would have won the MVP probably if the Red Sox had won that series, and the New York Mets were world champions. And another sporting event involving a New York team was going on that evening, which we'll talk about that in a minute. I cried again, but this time it was tears of joy.
Yeah, it actually does affect the other sporting event too, because
it does.
I remember. I wasn't at that, but I was. We'll talk about it. Probably more next episode. But yeah, it was quiet. And fandoms that had blended, when that was announced, the crowd picked up, which, the home team fed off of. So that was my memory of that.
Yeah.
Only because of the rain out, it bled into Monday Night Football. So
yeah,
they went head to head with the Giants.
But it's crazy, right? Of all Monday nights that Game 7 was going on.
Yeah, the Giants are playing.
The Redskins at the Meadowlands. Crazy. We'll get to the Giants in a moment. But Johnny, 2 years of excruciating pain of the Rick Sutcliffe and then those and I'm very happy saying this, fucking scumbag Cardinals in '85. Finally, at least for one moment, the city belonged to us.
Yeah, you couldn't believe it because he's so used to being laughed at, always the losers, and It was just like you didn't think you were alive. You thought you were dreaming because
absolutely.
You're watching other teams like the Yankees or Dodgers always winning, and you never thought that it would be your team. And
nope.
but also it was a weird year because from day one they led the division every day from opening day. They led wire to wire, and they were never in trouble until that Astro series. And all of a sudden, boom, Mike Scott, and you're down 1-0. And that Astro series, even though they won it in 6 games. Those 3 out of the 4 wins were very, very lucky. They had to come from behind.
Yes, they did.
They were miraculous. That the Lenny game, Darryl had to hit a 3-run homer to tie it up. They were down 4-0 in that game. The Nolan Ryan game, Strawberry, Darryl got the only run and hit it off the foul pole. But that could have went the other way. And of course, Game 6 they were down. Nepper pitched amazing up until the very end. And then boom, you go into the Sox and you just throw up 2 stinkers, man. In Boston, and all of a sudden, bang, you're down 2-0, and to come back from that, to lose the first 2 at home, man, it was great. Yeah. And also, you covered it on the Place to Be the Wrestling show. So after they lost 2-0, I went to the old MSG for the house show because my friend got tickets because he knew I was depressed and about to kill myself, so to cheer me up. and they had the. They had the live Piper's Pit, with Roddy had just turned with Bobby the Brain, and they were talking about the series, and Roddy's like, yeah, I'll bet you, I think it was like 500 or 1,000 or whatever. I'll bet you the Mets take it, even though they're down 2-0. So that fired up the crowd, and even though that part was bullshit, I was like, maybe that's hope. Not all hope is lost. So that was a good little side. You guys reviewed that show, too.
Yep. Roddy, the hot rod believed in us, Dr. G.
Yeah, that was some team though. I mean, it was made up. It was quite a mix. It was made up of veterans. You had you had Doc and Strawberry. The youngins. I mean, yeah, it was. I just remember it being like, I was a Yankee fan, but it was fun to watch the Mets, and I met Mookie Wilson.
It should have been a team that won more World Series, though.
Yeah.
They did.
They did. We'll get on to the later years. Yeah, 87 and 88. They should have won more than one, sure.
Yeah. I did. I remember I was going to a camp, and then I became a camp counselor. We used to get a Met every year. He used to come for a visit. I remember when Mookie came, and he was. We had Tim Tuffle the year they won in '86. I think we had Mookie like a year or 2 later. But Mookie was so funny. He's like, when you're playing up there at bat, you got to keep one eye on the ball and one eye to wink with. That's where you're going to be successful.
I love Mookie. I love him to death. Pride of Bamberg, South Carolina. Now, the thing I remember mostly is the big trade in the offseason because, the team was loaded, but they could have used one more starter. Obviously, the big trade that offseason was getting Bobby Ojeda because we needed another lefty starter, and he ended up having the best. He went 18-5. We had 4 guys win at least 15 games, and Bobby went 18-5. And I know you're laughing and making fun of it, Andy, but Tim Tuffle was a huge get, Johnny, because we needed that right-handed kind of like pseudo power bat on the right side in the infield. Because, Wally Backman was a switch hitter, but he mostly hit lefty. And he was a punch and Judy, bunt kind of guy. So it was nice to have another kind of strong – because, Rafael Santana was pretty much a defensive shortstop. He hit like 250, so those trades were huge for the Mets that year because those were like the last 2 holes to plug. And I remember one of the early they struggled for 2 days. I think they went they took 2 out of 3 from the Phillies. But the series that proved to me that they were ready to fire was they played 4 games one weekend. I think it was the end of April against the Cardinals.
Yeah, they swept them
at Busch, and they pimp slapped them literally Thursday through Sunday, and that was the end of that. They were cooked. I think they were 11 out at that point. So. And
also another huge thing was during in the middle of the season, Forster, who was washed up and was on the bench. He claimed that he wasn't playing because they were the management was racist and all that. So anyway, they cut him, and they re-signed Lee Mazzilli, who had some clutch, big friggin' pinch hits in those rallies in the Boston series. Without him, they don't. And that was a great story because Mazzilli was the star when they were shitty in the early '80s, and he was a star, and he didn't really pan out as a superstar player. He was nice, and he was okay, but he wasn't a perennial all-star or a guy that could lead the team. So he left, and for him to come back and to help him win the championship, that was a nice bonus too.
No, it was. No, absolutely. I agree 100%. And of course, all the fights. We fought the Dodgers. Tom Niedenfuer, I think, hit Ray Knight, and they fought. And of course, the big fight, Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati. Ray Knight just wanted to fucking punch everybody that year. And him and Eric Davis, and then Gary Carter tackled somebody, and that was a big. And he got kicked out. And I'll never forget. We were Jesse Orozco played the outfield for that game, and I think. Sadly, I have to make fun of my man, the Cobra, who was a Red by that point. We were supposed to lose. We were down 6-3 in the ninth inning, and the bases were loaded with 2 outs, and fucking Dave Parker that dropped the fucking ball. Here's a guy who won MVP 7 years earlier in the All-Star game for throwing guys out, and he drops the fly ball, all the runs score, and then I think it was Hojo hit a 3-run homer in like the 13th or something. That was the kind of year it was. Remember the 4th of July weekend, Johnny, against the Astros? Darryl hits a home run to tie it.
Fireworks night, yeah.
Fireworks night, and then Ray Knight. Game. Yeah, Ray Knight at the Golden Sombrero. He was 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. He hits a home run to win it. Fucking the next night, Tim Tuffle hits a grand slam. I mean, it was that kind of year. Just everything worked, I consider that team one of the greatest of all time. I'll put that team up against anybody, against any team all time, because they just refused to lose, and they went out to Finn McCool's in Port Washington and fucking drank and got shit-faced after every game. That was the great thing about Davey Johnson as a manager. He didn't care. You guys do whatever you want, but at 7:05, your ass belongs to me, and you better be ready to play. And every night they were ready to play, and then they went back out to Finn McCool's and got shit-faced again. So
he was good for that 1 year, but as G said, they should have won more, and that's on Davey too. His lack of discipline, especially with the 2 big guys. But we'll get into that. We'll get into that.
I also blame Frank Cashin for that too, but we'll talk about that down the line. Anyway. Some other quick notes through baseball. Of course, as I mentioned, Roger Clemens struck out 20, first pitcher to ever do that. And on opening day at Tiger Stadium, speaking of the Red Sox, Dwight Evans did something that never happened. The first pitch of the season, this was a day game, opening day, Dewey swings at the first pitch from Jack Morris and homers. Never happened before in baseball. And then we'll talk about Bo Jackson, because Bo Jackson did something involving baseball, but we'll get to him when we get to football. So there's baseball in 1986. Let's go, Mets. They did that terrible music video, too.
We got the teamwork to make the dream
work. Yeah. You're playing that in the break, Andy. I'm letting you know right now.
Okay.
Go find it. College basketball, quickly. Never Nervous Purvis. Freshman Purvis Ellison lead Louisville to the national championship. They beat Duke at Reunion Arena in Dallas. The 1986 draft, for the second straight year, a center was number 1. Brad Daugherty from North Carolina was picked by Cleveland. But among other guys picked, Chuck Person was drafted number 4. John Sally, a future great role player, drafted at 11th. Arvydas Sabonis was picked by Portland. Rodzilla was 27th. But we need to talk about this one guy, because this was one of the saddest moments, and this is a great 30 for 30 if you didn't watch it. The Celtics were on cloud 9. Might as well say it now. The Celtics won their 16th NBA title in 86. They beat the Rockets in 6 games. The Lakers, the defending champs, lost in the West Finals in 5 to the Twin Towers of Hakeem the Dream and Ralph Sampson. But Sampson threw up that fucking prayer out of his ass in Game 5 at the Forum that just happened to fall in. And the Lakers were out, and the Rockets lost to the Celtics in 6. So I was as happy as I was as a baseball fan as how miserable I was as a basketball fan, because not only did the Celtics win the world championship, but they had the number 2 pick in the draft. You're like, what the fuck? Typical Red Auerbach fucking cigars and brandy bullshit. Yes, Roger, I said that. And Bird won the MVP, etc. Of course, Patrick Johnny, Rookie of the Year. The Knicks still were struggling because they had nobody around him, but he had a great rookie year. Do you remember any of those games when he was a rookie?
Oh, yeah. It's amazing how you complain about the Celtics. Meanwhile, you guys pulled Magic out of your ass.
Yeah, I know, right?
Nice.
Only when it's convenient, Johnny. Only when it's convenient. And suits his needs.
In any event. So the Celtics had the 2 pick. Victim. And you're like, oh, my God. Oh, please.
You're playing victim again.
Oh, I am, aren't I? What's the again? When was the last time I played victim?
You're always playing victim with all your teams.
Because,
wow.
Or what are you crying about? You just don't like talking when your teams don't do anything. You just sit there and sulk. Well, your dad won all his money. Maybe he would have taken you to McDonald's and got you a Happy Meal with those winnings, Jesus. With your fucking, Miami Vice pants.
You think
anyway,
McDonald's in my house? I don't think so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it marinade? Does it have to have sauce and cheese on it for it to be a hamburger at McDonald's? That would have been disgusting. Anyway, so the Celtics had the number 2 pick, and they pick one of the greatest players in the country. Some people say a better player than Michael Jordan. Len Bias from Maryland. Amazing player. And then the next day, dead of a coke overdose. And that reverberated throughout the league and the NCAA because as it opened up a huge, weed was the problem in the 70s for the NBA. Coke was the problem in the 80s for the NBA. There were guys fucking bumping rails all over the league. And it was like just a rattling for the NBA when Len Bias died. That was crazy. And if you haven't watched the 30 for 30, please do. It shakes you to your core. He was not a drug taker, but he had friends of questionable character at Maryland, and there was a big cover-up. Lefty Drizel had to resign. It was a big fucking mess at Maryland. But yeah, who knows how good the Celtics would have been? Who knows? That's like having Michael Jordan on your team, and you're already a 67-win team who went 40-1 in the regular season at home. Amazing. Any event, sad moment in the NBA. In all seriousness, Celtics would have been an amazing fucking team if he was on that team. Amazing. So, any event, that was an eye-opener and the drug problem that poor David Stern had to deal with at that time. Chris Washburn had drug problems. Roy Tarpley had drug problems. A bunch of other guys. So, your Hall of Fame in the NBA that year, Billy Cunningham, Tom Heinsohn, Red Holtzman, Johnny, former Knick coach, Fred Taylor, and Stan Watts. Of course, as I mentioned, your NBA Finals, congrats to the Celtics. They did win their 16th championship. They beat the Rockets in 4. NFL, your Hall of Fame that year, some good players from the 70s, some of the better players. Let's see. We'll do the draft first, then we'll do the Hall of Fame. So the number 1 pick in the draft that year was arguably one of my favorite players in college that year, Bo Jackson. Bo knows, running back from Auburn, drafted by the Bucks. However, and I didn't know this story until we did the research for this. Hugh Culverhouse, the owner of the Bucks, took him out on a trip. Because of that, the NCAA barred Bo from playing baseball, which he loved. So he got pissed off at Hugh Culverhouse, who told him, I researched this. This is not illegal. And it was. So he decided to not sign with the Bucks and announced he was going to play baseball. And, of course, that June he was drafted by the Kansas City Royals. So that was a big deal. And in the end, the Bucks withdrew their rights to him. So the number 1 pick in the 86 draft ended up not playing for the team that drafted him, Tampa Bay. Of course, eventually he would play for the Raiders, but he would play for the Royals later that year. Jim Everett was picked 3rd by Houston. Of course, he would end up playing for the Rams. Webster Slaughter drafted by Cleveland. Other guys. This guy, gentlemen, you both know very well. With the kind of fitting. With the 52nd pick, the Giants took number 52, Pepper Johnson. Another guy to add to that linebacking core. Charles Haley was drafted in that draft. Vi Sikahema, remember him? One of the best punt kick returners of the 80s. And Mark Rippon was drafted by the Redskins. Keep that in mind. Your Hall of Fame class, Paul Hornig, ND man, played for the Packers. Ken Houston, Willie Lanier, Fran Tarkenton, former Viking and Giant, and Doak Walker. Super Bowl 20, which took place at the Superdome in New Orleans in January, concluded the 85 season. And in a surprise to absolutely no one, the Chicago Bears concluded their demolition of teams by pummeling the Patriots 46-10 at the Superdome in New Orleans. Not much to say there. That was all Ditka and Buddy Ryan, and that team was just fucking amazing. But a team that learned a lot from that 85 season was a team that the Bears beat in the playoffs that year, the New York Football Giants. And after years of sucking, and then years of accruing draft picks and drafting and growing and maturing, the 1986 New York Giants were arguably one of the best teams of all time. I contend, guys, that and you could say, obviously you're three of the Giant fans, so I think of your 4 Super Bowl teams, in terms of pure talent, this was the best team, I think. You had a great, patient quarterback. My dad loved Phil Simms. You had Joe Morris. You had Bobby Johnson, Lionel Manuel, all these role player guys. And then, of course, there was that defense and that front seven, which is probably one of the best front sevens of all time. Johnny, who was your favorite Giant that season?
Carl Banks.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Very different guy. Andy?
I had a Carl Banks jersey, but I'm actually going to say Phil McConkey.
Oh, the man from Navy, the midshipman. Okay.
Well, the way he would run out, lead the crowd with the towel going. You know, we'll talk about what happened in the Super Bowl with him. He had a great moment, but we'll talk about that on the next episode.
Doctor, I think I know who your favorite Giant is because you have, I think, 2 of his jerseys, correct?
Yep, it has to be. For me, it's actually tied. It's obviously LT and Phil Simms,
the captain of the offense and the captain of the defense. That 86 season. Now, guys, honestly, I watched every game that season. Again, as everyone knows, my dad and my brothers were Giant fans. I was the lone fucking scumbag Cowboy fan, and they were, of course, on the downs. Although they were 6-2 at the midway point, but then you guys broke Danny White's wrist, and they were fucked after that. Because when I saw Steve Pallure walk out, I went, "Oh fuck, this season's over." And it pretty much was. They went 1-7, and it began the slow decline, leading to eventually Tom Landry's dismissal.
Oh, what a shame!
Get to that. I know, fucking scumbags, cheating refs. Oh wait, sorry, that's not that show. Sorry. Anyway, I remember so many moments from that. The Cowboys did beat the Giants in Week 1, that Monday night game in Dallas, but then they went on a run, and I remember this moment. You guys are playing the Saints. And I remember LT going from east to west, not even north to south, sideline to sideline, to catch Reuben Mays and tackle him. Reuben Mays was one of those little whippet tailbacks. And LT ran from the right side to the left side to tackle him for a loss. That's the kind of fucking athlete Lawrence Taylor was. That's amazing. Then there was the win in Minnesota. If you remember the 4th and 17 to Bobby Johnson. Where the fuck were the Vikings fucking corners? I mean, literally Bobby Johnson was standing on the hash all by himself. I mean, Jesus. Was that Les Steckel? Who the hell was coaching the fucking Vikings? That was terrible. And Raul Alegre kicked the field goal. Andy, what are some of your memories of that season? Not the playoffs, regular season.
Well, I remember going to games because we had season tickets back then. No, it was
Saint game. Do you remember the Saints game?
No, probably. I didn't go to every one. It was also a long time ago. I don't have one happened yesterday. No, but we had it was it was one of those. It was the first time the team was really good. I mean, we were good the year before, but we were really good, and it was such a pretty much balanced team. I mean, it was running. We had a quarterback that didn't make a lot of mistakes. We didn't have big time receivers. Lionel Manuel was good, but that was one thing about the Giants teams for a long time though. We never really had those big wide receivers, like the big name ones. We were always defense, ball control, running, keep the clock. That was the New York Giants football, and it was just everybody was having the great years, and you couldn't get past that defense. Between the linebackers and the defensive line, they were unstoppable.
What about you, Johnny? What were some of your memories of that regular season, the 14-2?
Well, they learned a lot from that playoff loss in the prior playoffs to the Bears, because they pretty much went toe-to-toe with the Bears, and their defense was just about as equally as good as the Bears. They lost that game pretty much on that punt, that shitty Landetta punt that he whiffed on that caused that. I mean, they got shut out, but there wasn't really. They were just a slight notch below the Bears, and they took that momentum, knowing that they could play with the best, and they took that, and they were determined through the whole season. That playoff game motivated them through the whole season to be dominant.
Dr. G, you were sitting down there in Dolphin Country with Marino fans. Although there are probably more Giants jerseys you saw than Dan Marino jerseys, right?
There was. When we get to 87, I'll tell you my stories about the Super Bowl and all that stuff. But in Florida, how it was. But I kind of remember, I think it's week 9. They played the Cowboys, and Phil Simms really struggled in that game. I mean, I don't think maybe he had like 70 yards passing. But Joe Morris had a big game that game, and George Martin recorded like a late sack at the end of the game, which basically was the play to help the Giants win. I forget. They won by like 3 points or something like that.
Yeah, it was 17-14. Yeah, it was 17-14. Yeah.
So for some reason that game sticks in my mind. I don't remember a lot of games and all the stuff. I'm not like you where you have that photographic memory. But that game for some reason I just remember, because I remember Phil Simms was playing so bad and I was getting aggravated. But Joe Morris really had a great game, and again, the defense came up big, and that put the Giants at 7-2, and they pretty much coasted.
Yeah, that was for first place. The Giants and Cowboys were 6-2, and I don't remember if it was LT or Harry. My dad loved Harry Carson too.
Heart and soul of the team.
Yeah, yeah, and one of them sacked Danny White and broke his wrist. He landed funny. Well, he got folded in, and he left the game. And Steve Pallure came in, and I looked at my father and I went, "Oh Christ, we're done." And sure enough, the Cowboys went 1-7 the rest of the way. But I remember a game against Washington at the back end of the season, probably week 13 at RFK. It was for first place. Winner of this game was probably going to win the division. I think you guys were 11-2, and I remember just the defense just eating up Jay Schrader. I mean, he was a shit show. The guy had a good arm, but LT smacked the crap out of him, and George Martin and Leonard Marshall and Carl Beck. He just got fucking beat up. I remember 2 guys that season in the 4 games you played against them. These two quarterbacks had to have been sacked 35 times in the 4 games. Ron Jaworski and Neil Lomax. I felt like Neil Lomax got sacked 67 times by the Giants that season. I felt like the 2 games you guys played against the Cardinals, I feel like both games he was always on his ass.
Well, you think about the season. I mean, honestly, a few games at the end of the season they won big, but it was always 3 points, 4 points. There was the score was always very close. The defense was a defensive team more than it was an offensive team. That's just the way the team was built. So as a Giants fan, and Johnny and Andy, it wasn't like we had to sweat some games out. It wasn't like it was, was dominating games. We had to, sweat. And again, the Redskins had a great season as well. When we went into that game, we were both 11-2. So, it wasn't as. Even though we were 14-2, it wasn't as easy as a season if you're just looking at stats than it was. I mean, we really had to sweat out a lot of games.
A grinder. A team was we didn't blow people out. We did enough to win. We scored as much as we could, and then the defense just tried to be lights out. And we talked about that Monday night game that happened during the World Series. Mm-hmm. And I remember. Back then, we would get Sports Illustrated or the Daily News would have relive the best moments of the season VHS tape, and I think we have the New York Giants one, and we have some Yankee ones, hopefully in a box to my parents still. But I remember they said the Mets, they announced the Mets was winning or something like that, and the crowd at Giant Stadium just woke up and just fueled the team. That night, the team was a little flat, and it's amazing to have a baseball game affect a football game.
Yeah, and again, I remember some of that win against the Vikings. You beat Denver. Remember George Martin had that fumbling interception return, and LT tackled him in the end zone. I'll never forget that. And then you guys blew out the Packers, I think, in the last game after you won the division. There was that game against the Niners on Monday night when Mark Bavaro, who was my favorite Giant because, went to the Golden Dome, when Mark Bavaro dragged fucking 9 Niners,
yes, I remember that.
12 yards in that Monday night game at Candlestick. Yeah, I got to admit, I had a soft spot for that Giant team because that was a team that, my dad loved that team, and that's, I used to watch it because, the Cowboys were not on a ton. I mean, we'd usually be, the Giants were always on at 1 o'clock on CBS where we live. Obviously, where all of us lived. Mm-hmm. So did you get them at 1 o'clock, G, every week? I know the three of us did. Did you have them on? Were they on CBS at 1 o'clock every week, or did you get some fucking shit game?
In Miami, they had to worry about the Dolphins. Like, they didn't sell out the stadium. You weren't going to get the game. Was going to get blacked out. I remember that was always a big deal.
Isn't that fucking insane? No. They had the best, like literally one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the league, and they had a good team. And they would not.
You have to understand. Down in Florida at that time, now it's different. That the generation now roots for all the Florida teams. But most of the people that were living down there were from New York. I mean, it was, you saw Yankees, Mets hats. Like even for the '86 World Series, like we were saying, people that were Mets fans were going crazy. Because again, it was New York centric. And then even with the Giants, I mean, a lot of bars down there. There were Giants bars, down in, Fort Lauderdale area. I didn't really go down to Miami that much, but it's different now. But yeah, you're right. You would think with Dan Marino as their quarterback, they'd be much more popular than that. But again, there was a lot of New Yorkers down there at the time.
Yep, and there was
also half the city was needed Coke money in '86.
Well, we're gonna talk about Coke money because we're gonna talk about the team in a moment. We'll talk about the team that actually was the hot team in Miami in those years. Anyway, the Giants were the best team. Other teams won the divisions, but we'll talk about them later on. But we'll talk more about the Giants' run to Super Bowl 21 next month in the 1987 episode. So I just want to let you guys talk about the Giants because I know they're not my team, but again, that was a team that my dad was always very proud. Remember, my father, the Giants were fucking garbage through most of the Super Bowl years.
Horrible.
But he remembers the NFL championships in the late 50s, early 60s. He watched the game. He went to Yale Bowl and watched the Giants play.
So my dad, too. That's why he was so pissed when they came out with the PSLs. I followed this team to Yale Bowl and Yankee Stadium, and now I got to pay all this just a privilege to buy my tickets. I'm out.
Yeah. Is that how Irv talks?
No.
I don't blame him.
No, that was just...
Now we're going back to the 70s again, so...
I want to know... I'm just going to assume, Andy, that's how your dad talks. So
no, it's not. Well, when he gets annoyed, maybe. But no, that's not how
anyway,
Irv the second...
We'll talk more about the Giants. Next month on our next episode and their quest for the World Championship. We are going to talk quickly about college football. We're only talking about who won the Heisman that year. The Heisman Trophy winner was... We used to call him Vinny Goomba. Vinny Testaverde of Miami. Because we're going to talk about the Hurricanes for a minute. They had an epic year that year. They were undefeated. And they went down to Tempe to play Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl for the national championship. And infamously, they got off the plane wearing fatigues, thinking they were the fucking shits of the shits. And insulted Penn State at the dinner and acted like a bunch of jerk-offs. And then Miami went out and played 4 absolute garbage quarters. Vinny Testaverde threw 6 picks, and Penn State won the national championship.
That game was so hyped, and it was such an awful game.
It was an awful game. I mean,
because for a change, there were a lot of shenanigans with the bowls, and but this was finally number 1 versus number 2, and that game was really hyped. And Vinny came out, and Penn State must have wore a different color uniform because it turned out Vinny Testaverde was colorblind. So
obviously
that's what caused him to throw 8 picks. Yep.
Crazy. And it was also Lewis's first season at Notre Dame. Jerry Faust was booted the following year. And this was Lou's first year at Notre Dame. And he had a pretty good season. I think he went 8-3.
But Miami, very upset down in Miami. That if you want to talk about the team that was loved the most down there at the time, it was UM. People went crazy for UM down there. So that was very disappointing loss for people who rooted for UM at that time.
Yeah, which was just there because everybody else around the country wanted Penn State because everybody fucking hated Miami. So
pretty much.
In hockey, speaking of fucking scumbags, the Montreal Canadiens won the Stanley Cup. They beat the Calgary Flames in 5. Pat Roy won the Finals MVP. The Hall of Fame that year: Leo Boivin, Dave Keon, and Serge Savard. Jack Nicklaus won the Masters at 46 years old. I want to talk about this quick because what a round he had. The epic 17th green with the long putt, and I think it was 2 rounds earlier. Somebody said the bear has come out of hibernation. That was a great moment in golf history. Jack Nicklaus winning that Masters. Nothing much in tennis. No Grand Slams or anything of that nature. Dale Earnhardt won yet another Winston Cup title. There was the World Cup that year. Argentina, Diego Maradona. Speaking of coke, a lot of cocaine talked about in this month's sports segment. Argentina beat West Germany to win the World Cup. Boxing, we'll just quickly say there was a lot of consolidating of heavyweight titles, but on November 22nd, my man, Mike Tyson, the youngest world heavyweight champion ever, won the WBC world title, pimp slapping Trevor Berbick in 2 rounds to win the WBC world heavyweight title, and it was just the beginning for Iron Mike from Brooklyn, New York. No Olympics. We won't have Olympics for a couple of years. I know Johnny always looks forward to talking about the Olympics. The Schwanz Olympics.
Agreed.
Anyway, so that is it for a very long, longer than normal, but fun, nostalgic sports segment this month on the Year in Pop. Hope you all enjoyed it. Let us go down to the small screen television in 1986. This guy's voice is rested enough, Mr. Atherton. Take it away.
Some would say, keep them resting. No, anyway. Your top-rated TV shows in the 1986-1987 television season. You had The Cosby Show remaining at the top. Family Ties, Cheers, Murder, She Wrote, The Golden Girls, 60 Minutes, Night Court, Growing Pains, Moonlight, and Who's the Boss. That's your top 10.
Before you mentioned, I just want to say this quick. When you said Murder, She Wrote, going back, guys, to watching Pat and John do the Giant games, you like to hear Pat Summerall go,
"Yep."
Local news, then 60 Minutes, followed by Murder, She Wrote. I love Pat Summerall. And then the Sunday night movie, which was something with Melissa Gilbert or something in it. So anyway, you said Murder, She Wrote, Andy, and I just had to mention that. So go ahead.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was basically, NBC Must See TV was coming, and CBS was the place to go for your 1 hour dramas, I guess, so to speak. So your shows, though, that ended in 1986, a lot of 80s staples. We had Different Strokes, came to a close finally. Benson, The Fall Guy, which had a short but, fun run. Crazy Like a Fox, Hardcastle McCormick, TJ Hooker. These are shows my grandmother used to watch. The Love Boat finally came to port. Knight Rider, Riptide, Trapper John, MD, and the original Press You're at Luck. TV shows that premiered in 1986. You had The Red Fox Show, Sidekicks, Valerie, another one. It has a reputation of old people shows, and I've actually never watched it, but this was Andy Griffith's, second turn. It was Matlock, very famous, referred to on The Simpsons quite often by Grandpa Simpson. Matlock! If you remember that. That's pretty much my Matlock knowledge. A very funny show, actually, Perfect Strangers. I was a fan of the show, mainly because of the other characters. Ernie Sabella as Mr. Twinkassetti was one of the great foils on sitcoms at the time. And then we had It's Gary Shandling Show, which was on Showtime at the time, before it came over to Fox.
Loved that show.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was his best show. I actually will contend I like that better than Larry Sanders, to be honest with you.
It was out there. It wasn't
different for 19.
Yeah, it wasn't as polished. Yeah, he talked to the camera the whole time.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
And a great theme song. Our House, Easy Street, at the movies. Now, this was pretty remarkable. How this became, it was a syndicated show. You had 2 film critics from Chicago, Gene Siskel, Roger Ebert, and they reviewed movies. And this show ran. It's still running, actually, I believe, with different hosts now because both have since passed away. But, these guys revolutionized film review on television. Did you guys watch at the movies when it was on? If there was something you wanted to hear about?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, only to hear about, the plot points and to see like a couple of scenes. But, they were pretty much 2 miserable pricks that, they wouldn't like they wouldn't like the movies that I liked. They would like whatever, My Favorite Year or whatever. They would jerk off over that. But when it was like a comedy like Caddyshack or something, they would crap all over it. 2 miserable pricks crapping all over it. Kind of like modern wrestling nowadays, where there's various chat rooms where you got 2 or 3 miserable pricks that crap on everything.
Well,
Really?
it's kind of like the Oscars. Like, it's traditional that they kind of look down upon, comedies and big budget. It was always art house pieces or drama.
Like 2 Dave Meltzers.
Really was. I mean, they used to slam. Yeah, Johnny's right. Like all the movies we liked, horror movies and comedies. All it was Sophie's Choice and fucking Meryl Streep garbage and fucking Reds and all that boring nonsense. But not cool stuff like Jason, Freddy, Ty Webb, all the good stuff. Stripes, anything with Bill Murray in it they hated. They had no sense of humor. They wanted to be like intellectuals. And and Roger Ebert was worse. Gene Siskel occasionally would say something cool about like a horror movie or a fun comedy, but Roger Ebert thought he was so fucking highbrow, fucking fat fuck. Go have another Italian beef sandwich. Jesus Christ. I was always a Siskel fan. I fucking hated Roger Ebert.
All right. Also, if you're not here, Howard Hessman comes back to television on Head of the Class. It's amazing that some of the actors on that actually went on to be powerhouses behind the scenes at Nickelodeon.
Correct.
One of them had a fall from grace recently, but we won't talk about that. A dramedy, I guess you might want to say, L.A. Law.
I loved L.A. Law.
Which I never watched when it was on, but one of my first things to do at A&E was to format L.A. Law. So I got to...
And it's nowhere. It's not streaming anywhere.
It's one of those... It's like Dallas. It's like a black hole with some of these 80s shows.
It's fucking crazy. And the DVDs, forget it. They're fucking stupid expensive. Mm-hmm. But I loved L.A. Law. I would say it was more of a drama. I would say it was a dramedy. It was a drama. Had occasional funny moments, but it was mostly a drama.
They killed somebody off going down an elevator shaft.
Yes, they did. Diana there. That was what's his name's girlfriend. Yep, she went down the elevator shaft.
Yeah, she thought
he also had the first lesbian kiss in broadcast television history on that show too.
Yeah, they had a plot line about people who were licking frogs to get high. Yeah, it was a
great show. I loved it.
It was interesting. Another show I loved the time, Alf, Alien Life Form.
Another show with a MILF for a mom. What's her name?
Oh yes.
Fuck was her name? I can't think of her name, but she was hot. Max Gale just died recently. Not Max Gale. Max Gale was Wojciechowicz on Wojciechowicz.
Yeah, but I know who you're talking about. Max
Wright.
Max Wright. Thank you. Yeah. Max Gale was Wojo on Barney Miller.
Hey, Byron. Anyway, now Alf was so much fun. Then a shout out to Cowboy Senior, loves this show. Sledgehammer.
Yes, me too.
He was pulling forward in the sitcom tournament. Didn't make that far.
Unappreciated. Had a brief run, only 2 seasons. It was ahead of its time. It was kind of in the Naked Gun police squad vein.
Do you remember that show,
David Rasche? Yeah.
Sledgehammer.
I don't remember it, to be honest.
Yeah. ABC, Johnny.
Yes.
Yeah, ABC. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was kind of like the police squad, the Naked Gun, but. Yeah. With the police show parody, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we had another return to TV. Sherman Helmsley returned in Amen, which was good. I mean, I didn't watch it that much. Then Designing Women, which had a nice long run, and it did change the cast up in later years. A show that was more infamous, I guess, than for more about what happened to one of the stars, My Sister Sam.
Don't do that. I had a mega. I didn't kill her. It wasn't me. But I had a mega crush on Rebecca Schaefer. She was so fucking hot. And what happened to her was just a goddamn tragedy. Sucked. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She was shot in the face. That's fucked up. Anyway, we'll talk more about that when it happens.
Yeah. And then also a show that was a big deal for the network. It was on Double Dare. Double Dare was huge for Nickelodeon. It was the first game show for kids with, trivia questions and the physical challenge. And the obstacle course made Mark Summers a household voice. I mean, I wanted to be on Double Dare. It looked like so much fun.
My brother used to make fun of the kids on that show so much when I'd watch it. The kid be like, I like to play with my chemistry set. My brother goes, that's not the only thing you like playing with.
Do you want to answer the question? There's a physical challenge.
John, you want to talk about guys that touch their schwanz? It was everybody on Double Dare, pretty much. Oh, God.
So, your made-for-TV movies and miniseries that year, The Last Frontier and North and South Book 2. Your Saturday morning cartoons we were watching was Berenstain Bears, Wildfire Muppet Babies, Teen Wolf, Rockin' Wrestling was still holding on, Wuzzles, Care Bears, Flintstone Kids, the real Ghostbusters, because there was a
Good show.
There was another Ghostbusters cartoon that had been out that was not used the same name but did not feature the same characters. As always, we had Bugs Bunny and Tweety. Smurfs, Gummy Bears were pretty popular then. Alvin and Chipmunks. We talked about this earlier. Laser Tag was big. They had a cartoon. But a revolutionary daytime cartoon for kids with a lot of things that went over their heads was Pee-wee's Playhouse. Well, it was a lot of fun, that show. Oh, it was a good one! So, yeah, I mean, I loved it. Gee, were you watching Pee-wee's Playhouse back then?
Did you really just ask him that?
What?
I knew. I remember my cousin loving the show, and I'm like, I just not my thing.
That's me. We look for the the other side of the coin.
We definitely see the humor that they were trying to go for there. There was definitely, you can pick up on that even at that age.
And Cherry, come on. Anyway, Scott, you were watching it.
I would watch it occasionally. I would. Yeah. No, it was funny. Pee-wee was a fun, I mean, I watched it. I mean, it was probably just slightly over our age group, but but there were times where you would listen to a joke and wonder what the fuck they were saying, and then now you watch it and you're like, oh, stupid. Damn, I should have known that when I was 13, but nah, definitely like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was just out there and it was silly. Yeah, it was a fun show. And then also featured Lawrence Fishburne as the mailman.
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
After school lineup didn't really much change for us. We had Transformers, Voltron, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, but now Galaxy Rangers and Mask, a very underappreciated cartoon.
Yes, I agree with Mask. I agree with you. I was talking to Tech about Mask today. We were talking about Mask today. But that was the holy... You want to talk about what I was watching? That was the holy trinity. Transformers, Voltron, G.I. Joe. Mm-hmm. Didn't matter how old you were. Still love it. Optimus Prime, Voltron, and Duke. Those were the heroes of weekday afternoon.
Yeah. And then and that's pretty much the same for me. But then, right behind them, the next group was Thundercats, Mask, and He-Man, I think.
Yeah, He-Man was probably slightly younger.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I never watched... The set's cheap. I may end up buying it on DVD, but I never watched Thundercats. But that might be one I want to get into. That might be one I get into. I might have to check and see how much that is. But.
Some of the later seasons, I don't remember watching much, but the first couple of seasons was so good.
But I was very, very into Transformers, particularly Transformers and G.I. Joe. Voltron I got into a little bit later, and I own that set too. But those three shows, that was like weekday afternoons prime for any kid, regardless of whether you're a teenager, because Transformers transcends age. Mm-hmm. Because everybody loved Optimus Prime or Megatron or Starscream or Bumblebee or, they were awesome.
Who loves Starscream? Starscream was such a dick.
Starscream. That's what Megatron. Frank Miller as Megatron.
I am Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots.
Roll out.
No, but Mask also only lasted 2 seasons, and they've been trying to make a movie for a while, and I think it's great. It's kind of unknown. It's like under the radar, but you had all the vehicles sort of transformed, and you had this really cool computer that would get you the agents for the next mission, and each Mask had a different power. It was Mobile Armored Strike Command. That's what Mask stood for, against Venom, the vicious evil network of mayhem. Oh yeah, it was a tremendous cartoon.
I agree.
Moving on to one of our favorite shows we like to talk about, SNL, Saturday Night Live. It was season 11 that year. The cast had a lot of turnover, but a lot of the new cast members would really leave a mark and last for a long time. That cast was Dana Carvey, Nora Dunn, Phil Hartman, Jan Hooks, Victoria Jackson, John Lovitz, and Dennis Miller. Your featured players are A. Whitney Brown and Kevin Nealon. So that year, we'll kind of run through some of the guests. We had Sigourney Weaver. There was really no musical guest for the season premiere, but Buster Poindexter showed up, sang a few songs. Now, this is very special, though, for Dana Carvey. This is a big Dana Carvey episode because it was the first appearance of the church lady, And it features the now famous Choppin' Broccoli sketch where he plays a songwriter who had to come up with a song right on the spot and basically ad-libbed his way to, and my lady, she went downtown. She bought some broccoli. She brought it home. She's chopping broccoli. She's chopping broccoli. And isn't that special? Oh, love the church lady. Johnny, church lady fan?
Of course, of course.
Superior dance your way around the living room? There you go.
Say that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, some really great church lady sketches. I mean, the Sean Penn one is so good where she gets into a fight with Sean Penn when they start making fun of Madonna while they were still married. Yeah, it was, Danny DeVito had a really fun church chat. Also, we had Malcolm Jamal Warner and Run DMC. That was your second episode, and it featured the first appearance of the Sweeney sisters. That was Jan Hooks and Nora Dunn singing sister characters. Then we had Rosanna Arquette and Rick Ocasek, Sam Kinison and Lou Reed, Robin Williams and Paul Simon. You had the Three Amigos, Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Chevy Chase, along with Randy Newman. Then we had Steve Guttenberg and the Pretenders, and the mid-season show finale was a William Shatner host. And this is the famous Shatner Get a Life sketch. I don't know if you guys remember, he's at like a Star Trek convention, and there's all these guys, it features John Lovitz and Dana Carvey and Kevin Nealon, and they're all like really geeky Trekkies, even asking him about his horses at his ranch. And finally, he just kind of goes off script and he goes, for years I've been going to these conventions and getting to talk to you all, meeting you all, and I really just have one thing to say to you all. That's get a life. For Christ's sake, it was a TV show I did as a lark for a few years, and look at you. Look at those ears you're wearing. What have you done with yourselves? You must be almost 30. Have you kissed a girl?
I remember that very
much. It
much.
was hysterical. Very fun sketch. Then we had Walter Payton and Joe Montana, along with Deborah Harry, Paul Schaefer, and Bruce Hornsby and The Range. Bronson Pinchot getting on that, Perfect Strangers fame there, right there, and Paul Young. Willie Nelson was the host and musical guest. Valerie Bertinelli, Robert Cray, Bill Murray and Percy Sledge, Charlton Heston and Wynton Marsalis, John Lithgow, Anita Baker, John Larroquette, Timbuk 3, Mark Harmon, Suzanne Vega, Gary Shelling, Los Lobos, and Dennis Hopper and Roy Orbison. So yeah, a really good season. It was the beginning of a bounce back, a really great run with these cats. And they had a few more players over the next few years to really make this one of the strongest casts, I think, in the history of the show, actually.
This is the beginning of the stretch. I was back to watching every week for the next 6 years. This cast is amazing. In my opinion, for the first time since Jane and Dan did the Weekend Update, Jane, you ignorant slut. Dennis Miller will always be my favorite Weekend Update guy. Yeah. Always. I love Dennis Miller. Always will. And just the cast was so goddamn funny. Mm-hmm. Right, Johnny? They were all just so funny.
You got 5 killers: Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, Lovitz, Dennis Miller, and Kevin Nealon. That's 5 killers right there in one season. It is.
And the women were, first of all, I had a mega crush on Victoria Jackson. She was a smoke show. Jan Hooks was okay.
Jan Hooks was my favorite.
Yeah, I like Jan Hooks.
Nora Dunn as Pat Stevens. Lots of great characters.
Every time, and Johnny's right though, but it just makes me sad every time I look at Phil Hartman's name. It's going to get sadder as we get closer, but that guy was just so fucking good. He was so good. Mm-hmm. I love when he was Frank. G, I have to play you. If you remember, I have to play you the segments. We'll have to find them on YouTube, G. When Phil Hartman was Sinatra in the fucking studio, and who the hell was
he did the duet sketch.
Yeah, who was Steve Lawrence and Edie Grohl? I can't think of who it was.
This. Oh, that was
oh my God!
It was Mike Myers.
Phil Hartman as fucking Sinatra is so goddamn funny because it's exactly how you thought Frank would act.
I kind of remember this a little bit though.
God, it is so fucking funny. Oh my God, that's Saturday Night. That is Saturday Night fucking Live, not the fucking garbage they play now. That's Saturday Night Live right there. Yes. These people were legitimately funny. They didn't need to make politics jokes every goddamn segment. They were funny. Mm-hmm. They didn't have to lean on picking on Republicans all the time like they do on fucking Saturday Night Live. They just were funny. They did sketches about everything, and they were funny. and that's what I love about this. And we'll get more into it down the line, but they finally figured out the right mix of comedians to put on this show. Thank God Lauren found these guys, because he'd have been fucked if that show, if they couldn't really salvage it. They'd be calling Vince, could you science main event every week? Because it was rough.
And Dennis Miller just owned Weekend Update from the start. Once he sat in that chair, I don't think there's been anybody better. Really don't.
Nope.
And there have been there, and that's not taking anything away from anybody else who's ever done it. Norm had a really good run. Even the current guys are not bad, but Dennis is Weekend Update.
Yep.
Just that dry, just that delivery, he just took it and made it his. That's all there's to it.
I agree 100%.
At your Primetime Emmy Awards that year, your hosts were David Letterman and Shelley Long. Your outstanding comedy series was The Golden Girls. That was a very fun show. Cagney and Lacey repeats as your best drama. Your outstanding comedy variety or music program is your Candy Center Honors. Your drama special, Love Is Never Silent. Michael J. Fox is your best lead actor in a comedy for Family Ties. Betty White is the first of the Golden Girls to win an Emmy for best lead actress. William Daniels repeats as your lead actor in a drama series for St. Elsewhere. This time it's Sharon Gless, who beats out her co-star, who had just three-peated before that, for Cagney and Lacey. John Larroquette in his second of, I believe, 3 Emmys that he wins for Best Supporting Actor in a comedy. Speaking of 3 in a row, Rhea Perlman takes home her third straight Supporting Actress in a comedy series for Cheers. Edward John Carlin for Cagney and Lacey is your supporting actor, and Bonnie Bartlett is your supporting actress in a drama for St. Elsewhere. Some of your your TV notes that year. The very famous "I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV" phrase is first used. It's parodied in a Vicks 44 commercial. Rod Roddy becomes a permanent host, becomes a permanent announcer, replacing the late Johnny Olson on The Price is Right. After 4 seasons, NBC cancels Remington Steele. The announcement results in Pierce Brosnan being named the newest portrayal of James Bond. As a result of the Steele's ratings, NBC reverses its decision and announces Steele will return midway through the 86-87 season. This results in Bond movie producers withdrawing their offer to Brosnan, who would then take on the role in 1995, but Timothy Dalton takes on the role of James Bond at the moment. If you want to hear more, Scott, you and Tech, you did a great series on all the James Bond actors. You broke it down per actor, basically, and talked about their movies.
Yeah, so we really dive deep into this story. So listen to them all, but specifically if you want to know about this situation that happened, listen to the Pierce Brosnan episode. We go very deep. There's more to this than meets the eye that in this story about Remington Steele, but yes, please check it out. It was very good. Very good.
Also, on April 21st that year, Geraldo Rivera hosted a live 2-hour syndicate special, The Mystery of Al Capone's Vault, and it is empty. There is nothing in there. I remember that. This is probably one of the biggest swing and misses in TV history, I think.
Some beer bottles, some empty beer bottles.
Yeah. Pretty much just what it was.
Empty
beer
liquor bottles.
Yep.
Also happening, Cher.
That was pretty big, though. I
It was.
Everybody wanting to watch that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I agree.
And then he became a laughingstock, basically, after that. That killed all his any little credibility Geraldo Rivera had. It pretty much killed it at the time. On May 22nd that year, Cher calls David Letterman an asshole during taping of the NBC's Late Night with David Letterman. Disney Channel begins broadcasting a 24-hour-a-day schedule. We also talked about this because of Game 6 in the World Series. Saturday Night Live had to be canceled that night, and they ended up taping it starting at 1:30 in the morning. And it aired 2 weeks later, featuring an introduction by Mets pitcher Ron Darling, who playfully apologized for the cancellation.
I remember that, actually.
So, that's going to wrap up, though, the first half of Year in Pop 1986. We got much more to talk about in the worlds of the news, music, and movies with Scott Criscuolo, Jake, Arsenio D'Amato, and Dr. G, George Ribellino. I am Andy Atherton. Stick around. Year in Pop 1986. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, Pop Feed flunkies and junkies. See, Dr. G, they're on this side of the feed, too. Welcome back to the Year in Pop. Scott Criscuolo, Andy Atherton, the Doctor, Big Johnny. 1986, big, long, meaty first segment of a lot of great stuff that year. We'll hustle along here in the back end with some news, music, and movies. But don't forget to check out all the great feeds here on the Quad. Of course, this feed, the Place to Be Nation Pop feed. This show, Diamond Conversations, Making Mount Rushmore, all the great shows here on the Pop feed. Pop Goes to Classics, continuing the series Tech and I are doing for the Star Trek films. Keep listening. Thank you for that. Of course, the feed that I purvey, the Place to Be Nation PTB Wrestling Network, all the great shows over there that all of you guys are on. Thank you for your support and your support for clicking. Don't forget to check out the store. Go to tpublic.com, type PTBW in the search. Of course, the Jenny Physician, Jennifer Smith, and all her great shows. And, of course, the North-South Connection podcast feed. Mr. D'Amato is on often with his great shows that he is on. Don't forget to go to Facebook, check out the GWCW ballot, watch your matches, New Year's Eve, hand it in. Of course, 2021, Mr. Atherton on PlayStation.com will reveal the GWCW Greatest Match project. Check out the new Place to Be chat discussion group that we've kind of rejuvenated. We're having a lot of fun over there. Go to Place to Be chats, find it, and invite. Request an invite. We'll get you in. We'll have a lot of fun. We talk wrestling, and he does those funny little things where we have to pick like one thing out of 8, and we want to pick all 8, and he makes us pick one, so we hate his guts. Anyway, that kind of stuff. A lot of fun. A lot of fun stuff.
I'm not the only one doing them though these days. Trust me. It's contagious. What else are we doing? We're in a friggin' quarantine still.
I know, yeah, exactly. And PlayStationNation.com/Amazon. Buy all the great stuff over there. We get a little taste so we can keep the site going. So there you go. All the great stuff. There we are. All right. Back to 1986. Let's go to the headlines. News in 1986. We're midway through Mr. Reagan's second term. But no presidential news, really. But a lot of stuff happened in 1986, and most of it kind of sad. Mr. Atherton, the floor is yours.
Yeah, kind of a downer in terms of our news segment. But nuclear over in the Soviet Union, a nuclear reactor at Chernobyl explodes on April 26th of that year. It caused a release of radioactive material across much of Europe. Basically, thousands of people died, and in the surrounding area within 18 miles of the nuclear plant. It not only damaged, in Russia, but parts of Europe, notably Sweden and Finland, were also hit with contaminated dust. Eventually, cleanup workers were able to contain the nuclear disaster by putting a concrete sarcophagus over the damaged reactor, but it was still thought to be somewhat unstable. During the late 90s to mid-2000s, Europe and Ukraine worked together to create an even more permanent and stable cover to contain the radiation. Yeah, it's like a ghost town there. It's like if you ever watch the History Channel show Life After People. that's kind of an indication of what could happen if there is one of these incidents that happen. Now, this is probably our "Where were you when Kennedy was shot?" moments for our generation. But unfortunately, of course, I didn't put the date in my notes, but the Space Shuttle Challenger disintegrates 73 seconds after launch, killing all 7 astronauts on board. The Space Shuttle was launching from Cape Canaveral in Florida, and it was mission to bring 7 astronauts into space, including a teacher who was specifically chosen and trained to join the mission. Tragically, they were all killed in the explosion. It was later discovered that O-rings on the rocket booster had been compromised in colder temperatures that were experienced in the days leading up to the launch. It had caused a fuel tank, the fuel tank, to become damaged and the space shuttle to disintegrate. Due to the disaster, the space shuttle program was suspended for 2 years while the issue was investigated and safety features were improved. It was investigated by a special government commission, which found that NASA had been warned about the potential design issues, but chose not to act on the warnings. On March 9th, the United States Navy divers find the largely intact but heavily damaged crew compartment of the Space Shuttle Challenger, but the bodies of all 7 astronauts are still inside. One of the probably saddest moments I can remember, probably only second to 9/11 in my lifetime to what I probably have experienced or seen or, that's happened. I remember I was in 8th grade when this happened. I was homesick from school, actually. I can't remember. I kind of faked a lot, so I don't remember if I was really sick or I wasn't. But I was watching this on TV. I don't think they were in my school, but I was watching it, and all of a sudden, poof, like what happened? I don't understand. I literally called my dad at his office. I'm like, Dad, I think the space shuttle blew up. He said, what? Really? I said, yeah, I'm just watching on TV, and it launched and it was gone. Scott, were they showing this at school? Were you home? Where were you when this happened?
It was January 28th.
Okay.
No problem. It was 11:39 in the morning. I was at school. I actually, the kids were. I was still kind of healing from my knee injury. I tore knee ligaments playing football the previous October of '85, so I was not out for recess yet. So I this was I was in 7th grade, so I was doing stuff in school and like homework and helping the teacher with shit, blackboards and all that crap. And the kids came, the rest of my class came in and we sat and watched it. So I literally was sitting there. I think I was in the second row, so I was one of the closest to the TV, and I think we didn't know what the fuck to do. I mean, all of a sudden the whole thing blew up, and we're all looking at each other like, "What the fuck just happened?" What do you say? Holy shit, The teacher was Krista McAuliffe. Mm-hmm. Just to give when I found out that the compartment didn't blow up, I was kind of stunned. And that they were found like almost not intact, but Francis Scobie, Michael Smith, Ronald McNair, Ellison Orozuka, Judith Resnick, Gregory Jarvis, and Krista McAuliffe. There's your 7. Yeah, I remember coming home from school and we were all just kind of stunned. And then I remember President Reagan doing having an address to the nation that night, and it's just very sad. I love NASA. I love space exploration. Obviously being a sci-fi guy, I love outer space, and I love NASA as a kid. And I remember being really discouraged. Like, oh man, and sure enough, 32 months they didn't do another one. And then when you find out later that they probably could have avoided it, that sucks even more. I'm surprised a movie hasn't come out yet about NASA looking like assholes in this. Where were you, G?
I was actually on a field trip that day. We were at the Museum for Discovery and Science. I think it was in Miami. And I remember, because everybody was so curious about it. But I remember, I forget, I just happened to be walking around and I hear 2 teachers talking that, the space shuttle blew up. So I kind of caught the end of the conversation. So I was like, wow. And I didn't know who to go tell. I remember, I think I told my best friend at the time, I'm like, I think the space shuttle blew up. I heard, the 2 teachers talking about it. And for sure, once we got everybody together, they announced it, obviously, because obviously it was going to get around. Now, obviously, news didn't get around in those days like it does today, because we didn't have cell phones and all that stuff. So, and then I remember just going home that night and just everybody just sitting in front of the television, watching, and then watching President Reagan's address. I agree with Andy. I think that and 9/11 is, 2 things you'll always remember where you were at when it happened. And, it was definitely a sad day, because I remember it was so exciting to have a teacher go up for the first time. And I remember the teachers were really excited about that as well. And they thought, hopefully that was going to be a learning experience, and, the teacher could bring back a different perspective on being up in space compared to actual astronauts. So it was definitely a sad day, in our history. And that's something I don't think any of us that were alive during that time will ever forget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Johnny, what are your memories from that?
Yeah, I was in between classes, and I caught wind of it later on, and just a terrible tragedy. Not much I could elaborate on. Mm-hmm. Other you guys' memories were pretty good. So. Yeah,
it was. I mean, especially for the younger ones. I mean, it was everywhere. I mean, they were trying to, talk about it. I remember, during the research, I found that Punky Brewster. I remember watching this. Punky Brewster did an episode, and actually,
I remember that. Yeah.
I think it turned out to be the last episode that actually aired. And T.K. Carter was playing the teacher, and they kind of went around like, would you go into space if they ask? And he's like, yeah, I would go in a heartbeat because what it means to mankind. I mean, I don't know if I would have, but I just remember they were just trying to, everybody that this was an accident, it was a tragedy, but we're not going to give up on our space exploration plans. I mean, we may pause it for a while, but it's going to be, we're still going to move forward at eventually. So space was actually kind of a big deal in a few stories that year. We had some space probes that flew by Halley's Comet in March of that year. Halley Comet, that's the one that comes around like every, 50-something years or something like that. Then we had the Soviet Union. It launched, it's the core unit of the Mir space station into the Earth orbit in February of that time. It was the largest space station ever created, and it had 5 expansion modules that would go up over the next 10 years, and it became inhabitable and remained occupied for over 100 space travelers over 12 countries until June of 2000. After 14 years of service, it was abandoned by Russia, and the defunct station returned to Earth in March 2001 with a controlled re-entry. Also that year, the Iran-Contra affair came to light. President Ronald Reagan's administration sold arms to Iran, an avowed enemy. At the time, Americans were being held hostage in Lebanon by Hezbollah, a militant Shia organization loyal to Ayatollah Khomeini. They reported that they had been selling it in order to secure the release of the hostages by the pro-Iranian groups. On November 21st of that year, National Security Council member Oliver North and his secretary Fawn Hall started shredding documents implicating them in selling weapons to Iran and channeling the proceeds to help fund the Contra rebels in Nicaragua. This was a big deal. I mean, I really wasn't, on top of it because, again, I was only 13 at the time, but 14. But I remember Oliver North being all over it and was basically the scapegoat of this whole thing. Fawn Hall, who was quite a looker, I remember seeing her. The whole thing about shredding documents became a big deal. You guys remember this story when it hit?
Oh yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember. I remember Oliver North. I almost said Oliver Stone. Oliver North's testimony. I remember that. I remember a lot of people. Like, this wasn't Watergate, you know what I mean? Like, I remember a lot of people, older people, saying, "Oh, he's, Reagan's gonna have to resign. It's like Watergate. He held," and a lot of the people were like, "You know what? This isn't Watergate. He didn't cover up a crime. He didn't lie to us." I honestly think this was done under his nose. Should President Reagan have probably been a little more in tune? Yeah, but I think people forgave him because they loved him so much, and this wasn't something that really affected us directly. Oh, whatever. So give money to the fucking stand. What do I give a shit? I think that's what most people thought about at that time. Like, all right, whatever. Who cares? It doesn't affect my life. I think a lot of people thought that way. And I think a lot of people thought all of the stuff kind of went over their heads. Like all this money moving from one thing to another and all that kind of stuff. But, I mean, it was definitely probably something they shouldn't have done. But in the grand scheme of things, I think it was something that the country didn't really care. Unless you were a Democrat, of course, who probably wanted Mondale to win in '84 or whatever. But I mean, it wasn't Watergate. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I think, and he went on TV and he admitted that President Reagan went on TV and admitted he blew it. He should have been paying more attention. But Oliver North definitely fucking fell on the sword, no doubt about it. And you know what? The guy made out pretty good. He ended up doing a show on Fox, and he's all respected now. Time heals all wounds. I think even Nixon, before he died. Time heals all wounds, But he definitely fell on the sword. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Bobcat Goldthwait had a really funny line at, I think it was Comic Relief that year. Because Oliver North always confused me because he was discharged from the Army, but showed up to the hearings wearing his uniform. Now, I've been fired from a lot of jobs, but you don't see me tooling around in my Burger King outfit very often.
That's good.
Anyway, so it wasn't all bad, though. The U.S. and Soviet Union started arms talks between Reagan and Gorbachev, leads to a commitment to disarm, thus ending a long period of instability caused by the Cold War. Gorbachev steps up his reform program in Russia, introducing perestroika, which is restructuring, and glasnost, which is openness. My Russian's coming out.
And how is your sister tonight?
I was waiting for I wanted to give Johnny that softball to hit.
But with that, we're going to end the news segment and move on to what was going on. What were we listening to on radio in our music section, Mr. Criscuolo?
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. As we go through the 80s, obviously albums were becoming less important. There were great albums, but albums were becoming less important. Singles were becoming the hot thing. So we'll focus a little bit more on the singles. We will talk some albums, but pop became more of a – I think this is where it really comes down to. Pop was a singles genre, and rock was an album genre still. And that includes metal because a great album came out in 1986 for the metalheads out there. But the number one song in the country at the end of 86 was a song that my class sang, believe it or not. And at the end of 87, when I was in 8th grade, our class song was That's What Friends Are For by Dionne Warwick, Gladys Knight, Elton John, and Stevie Wonder. Great song, actually. And I believe that's the song. It was for AIDS research, I think. It was a charity song. I think it was AIDS research, if I remember correctly. Lionel Richie at number 2, Say You, Say Me. What a great song. Say You, Say Me. I love Lionel and his poofy hair. I Miss You by Climax at number 3. Little Michael McDonald, On My Own, with Patti LaBelle at number 4. Broken Wings by Mr. Mister at number 5. My Girl Whitney. Oh, I love Whitney. Whitney Houston, How Will I Know? Big song, big video. Is it sad that I really love this song? It was just
it's actually a fun song. I'm sorry.
Even my overlove of Eddie. Party all the time. My girl wants to party all the time. What a great. Come on, Johnny. Even you love that song.
No, I don't. Sorry. I'm pissed I didn't do. I'd rather do him. I think he didn't do a movie this year.
I know. I know, really. Burning Off by Survivor at number 8. Kyrie, Mr. Mister, their other hit, which I actually like a little more than Broken Wings, at number 9. Addicted to Love by Robert Palmer.
That's a great song.
That is a great song. Great at number video. 10. Some other singles to mention. Greatest Love of All by Whitney Houston. Another class in my school sang that song. A lot of Whitney being sung in my school. Let's see. Glory of Love by Peter Cetera, which was a song from a movie that Mr. Atherton will mention in our final segment. West End Girls by Pet Shop Boys. That was kind of a different new wave song, but I thought that was a pretty kicking song. Never by Heart. Oh, Nancy Wilson.
I saw them in concert around this time.
I saw
out in Johnny's neck of the woods at the Nassau Mausoleum.
At the Mausoleum. I saw Heart in 2008. Let's see. Higher Love by Steve Winwood. He was kind of coming back. He was gone for a few years, and he had some pretty good songs. That album came out. God. Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel. Oh, God. What a video. Love Sledgehammer. Dr. G knows Sledgehammer very well through his professional journey, don't you, Dr. G?
I do.
Sarah by Starship. I love Starship. I love Sarah. Let's see. Some other. Take My Breath Away by Berlin. Another song from a movie that Mr. Atherton will mention later. Rock Me Amadeus by Falco. Papa Don't Preach by Madonna. You Give Love a Bad Name by Bon Jovi from a great rock album, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Mad About You. Belinda Carlisle broke away from the Go-Go's, started getting some single success. She was a smoke show.
Look at the number 37 song, Scott. We talked about that in the 80s song tournament.
Level 42 with Something About You. There we go. There's level. The song that Andy thinks everybody knows, except him. When in reality it was just him. True Colors by Cyndi Lauper. Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins. We all know what movie came out in 86. That's the second one I mentioned. Crush on You by the Jets. I have a very interesting story about this song. I was at a birthday party at a skating rink in my hometown. It's called Skate World in West Haven.
Very 80s.
Very 80s Skate World. Cascade Boulevard. The colors on the walls. It was so Xanadu-ish. Anyway, somebody had a birthday party, and we were all skating and hanging out. And somebody... there was a girl that apparently liked me that I didn't know about. And apparently she goes to the DJ, there's a DJ booth, and says, this next song is for Scott from Dina. And I went, oh. And I knew Dina. She was pretty cute. And it was the song at number 52, Crush on You by the Jets. Wasn't that sweet? I went out with her for a couple months. But anyway, that was a fun, cute little story. Invisible Touch by Genesis, another great song. Take Me Home Tonight, Eddie Money. Who doesn't love Eddie Money? So fucking good. Here's one of your wife's favorite songs, Dr. G. At number 60, We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off by Jermaine Stewart. Does anybody know what cherry wine is? Fuck, there's no cherry wine anywhere. Was that did even like what's the screw top?
Mad Dog 2020.
No, what's the wine I used to drink, G, that I drank in college? Boone's Farm.
Boone's Farm.
Did even Boone's Farm make fucking cherry wine? No, but Jermaine Stewart apparently had cherry wine. Lisa and Cult Jam. I'm Your Man by Wham. Aren't we? ROC Living in America by James Brown.
You skipped the outfield. Your Love. Unfortunately, the guy just.
Yeah, he did just die. You're right. Call Johnny. Yep, 62. Your Love by the outfield. He just passed away, the front man of the out. He died the same day Spencer Davis died. That was a bummer. Word Up by Cameo. Word Up. Number 69. Big song here. Why Can't This Be Love by Van Halen? Because, we'll talk about it when we get to the albums. Let's see. Anything good? Sweet Freedom by Michael McDonald. That's a yacht rock favorite right there. Mr. Atherton, fancy new wave pants. Do you remember the Timex Social Club?
How do rooms get started? Starved by the jealous people.
There you go.
Yep.
Nice.
Sleeping Bag by ZZ Top. Throwing It All Away by Genesis. That's a great song. Love that song. Take Me Home by Phil Collins. I know that because that's what they used to play on the credits every episode of Saturday Night's Main Event. They play Take Me Home by Phil Collins. Anyway, good songs by everybody in 1986. Some albums. Whitney Houston was the top album on Billboard with her debut album, which was fucking killer. Afterburner by ZZ Top, great album there. Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits, another great album. Brothers in Arms, Control by Janet, love that song. Love Janet. Let's see, No Jacket Required by Phil Collins, and that's like an all-time album, Johnny, right? No Jacket Required.
Oh yeah, a lot of bangers. Yep,
a lot of bangers on that one. Dr. G, did you have that cassette?
I did.
Yep, that was a good one.
From Columbia House.
Oh, who didn't love Columbia?
13.
Who didn't love Columbia House
for a penny? And
that's
then
right. Used to tape the penny to the fucking
and
cardboard.
then you had to pay $20 for.
I know, right? Yeah.
And you use all these fake names to keep doing it.
Criscuolo, Scott.
Oh, my
Scott
dad
Joseph,
used to do
Joe
it all the
Scott.
time.
Oh my God, my brother had so many aliases. Primitive Love by Miami Sound Machine at number 10. Oh my God, G, how often did you hear them on the fucking radio in your neck of the woods?
Oh, I hate
Gloria Estefan and Miami Sound Machine.
Ugh.
Riptide by Robert Palmer. Hey, look, the Broadway album by Barbra Streisand. Nobody cares. Knee Deep in the Hoopla by Starship. All right, here we go. At number 14. So there was admittedly a little bit of a hole in great rock after the awesome album 1984 came out because, as we talked about, David Lee Roth left Van Halen to embark on a solo career. Or we could say it was a mutual break.
Parting of the ways.
Parting of the ways. Rest in peace, Eddie. So I was like, my brother was stunned. My brother loved Van Halen, still does. Saw them more than anybody else. And then we found out who the frontman was going to be. And when we found out it was Sammy Hagar, we're like, really? Like the only two songs I know I know three songs. Heavy Metal. Of course, I Can't Drive 55 and Three Lock Box, which is actually one of my favorite songs. I love Three Lock Box. In my Three Lock Box. So I'm like, is this really going to fit? Like, Johnny, what were your thoughts when you first heard that Sammy was joining Van Halen?
Yeah, I was very skeptical because, Dave is a monster, man. He's a superstar, and Sammy is just like a middle and a mediocre type rocker. Although he did have talent and some good songs, so it was a big surprise. And also with 5150, great album, but also they did it. You don't really remember like the video presence. I don't even think they had videos for Why Can't This Be Love when it first came out. Like usually when Van Halen has that first song like Jump world premiere video, but here they did it just based on radio, so, and they relied on the music instead of the video. But it was surprising because Sammy fit right in, and musically, says some of the songs are even are even better than with Dave.
I was surprised too. I remember my brother seeing them. They did the Live Without a Net video at the New Haven Coliseum. My brother was there. They taped the DVD or VHS tape, I guess, at the time. What did you think of this album, Jay? You were a Van Halen guy. What did you think of this album?
Like you guys, I was skeptical, but you know what? I did come around on Sammy. I thought he did a pretty good job. I like the album, but just like everybody else, you like Dave better. He was the one that we grew up with, but Sammy did a pretty good job. I think they were just as successful with him as they were with Dave. I mean, if you looked at things, again, everybody has their favorites, so you're going to have that argument. But like you said, even though we were skeptical, I think in the end, he wound up doing a pretty good job, and I enjoy some of the Sammy songs.
It's funny. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, no, I love. I mean, Dave had. Sammy was. I think the difference is Sammy was really consistent. Like those, they were like all really good songs. Dave had like some of those, like Panama, Jump, Hot for Teacher, all those early songs, even stuff from like Diver Down, stuff like that. Those were like just rock, like high. Sammy's was really good, and really they always delivered with the Sammy.
Yeah, I mean, I was very anti-Sammy in the beginning. I was very loyal to Diamond Dave, and I really didn't warm up to Sammy till almost when he left, and we'll get to that down the line. 5150 came out in '86. It finished 14th. Born in the USA. We talked more into that enough about that. Songs from the Big Chair by Tears for Fears, another great album. A soundtrack to a movie at number 21. We'll talk about that movie. It's about some guy who flies planes. The soundtrack to Miami Vice, which was still pretty hot in 1986. Tough Enough by Fabulous Thunderbirds was a good album. The Ultimate Sin by Ozzy, tremendous album. So by Peter Gabriel, also very, very well known. Raising Hell by Run DMC, one of the best early hip hop albums. Let's see, Raised on Radio by Journey, not a bad album. We mentioned Invisible Touch. Well, the album by Genesis was very good. Let's see. Anything else here? The soundtrack to another song, a movie, Andy, that I hope you'll mention shortly, and that is Pretty in Pink. Pretty in Pink. Nothing better than a little psychedelic verse. Number 56, Theater of Pain by Motley Crue. That was actually a very good album. They were still kind of shoehorned in that kind of glam rock thing. They really didn't bust out, I think, until their next album in terms of like mainstream, but Theater of Pain is actually a very good album. Let's see. Anything? Oh, number 65. Better talk about this movie. It's one of Dr. G played the shit out of this cassette when he owned it. We were, of course, talking about the soundtrack to Rocky IV. Turbo by Judas. Yeah. Turbo by Judas Priest. My brother played the crap out of that album. Reckless by Bryan Adams, one of my favorite albums and tapes that I played the hell out of. Let's see. Anything else here? Power Windows by Rush. That's an unheralded Rush album. Speaking of David Lee Roth, his solo album, Eat 'Em and Smile, was at 84. So how about that, huh? Miles and miles below Van Halen's first album. But an album at number 87 doesn't really reflect how great this band was and how great they were going to be. At number 87 is Master of Puppets by Metallica. My brother played the crap out of Kill 'Em All, and he played the crap out of Ride the Lightning, which were the first two albums. But when he saw them live, opening for Ozzy on this tour at the New Haven Coliseum, my brother came home that day and said, I just watched the next great metal band. And I said, oh, you saw it? But, I said, oh, Ozzy? He goes, no, not Ozzy. He goes, this band that I just saw opening for them. They literally destroyed Ozzy off the stage that day in 1986 at the Coliseum. They were special. Now, I didn't really know much about Metallica until the next album came out because of the music video. But listening back to Master of Puppets, it is evident that they were arguably going to be like the next giant metal band and mainstream hard rock. And we would see that over the next couple of years. Right now, they're kind of still in that metal niche, but by their next album, which we'll talk about in a couple of episodes, they really definitely push out to the mainstream. So look forward to that down the line with Metallica. But Master Puppets came out in '86, and that was like one of their huge breakthroughs, not just in the metal community, but slowly into regular rock. So there you go, Dancing on the Ceiling at number 99. So there we go. A year. We talk about albums, and guess who we didn't mention yet?
Oh, shit.
Do we mention him, Dr. G? I'm not sure. Maybe we do, and maybe we don't. I'm not quite sure. Why don't we check his discography and see?
Did he take a dump that year or something?
Let's see. Oh, on July 9th, 1986.
It's a matter of trust.
Billy Joel released The Bridge, which was one of his more unheralded albums. A Matter of Trust was most definitely on it, Johnny D'Amato, which was a tremendous album. But kind of an album that in his career kind of and he did take a shit, Andy, and Dr. G cares, so fuck you. The Bridge was definitely an album that kind of went under the radar. Obviously it'd been 3 years since An Innocent Man. The greatest hits had come out, but this is his first album of big music in 3 years. I kind of remember it. I had the tape. I remember not loving it in the beginning, but warming up to it eventually. What'd you think, Jay, when you first listened to this album?
It was definitely. He says it's one of his least favorite albums. He kind of threw it together because the record company wanted him to do it. But there was I remember the Matter of Trust video. That's
yes, I love the Matter of Trust
in
video.
That factory or whatever,
where he's playing the guitar.
Yeah. He always had great videos. I have to say that, even though he was not big into doing them, he actually his videos were really good. So that's what I remember mostly. But I think it's one of those things as a fan. I've kind of grown to love the album over the years. I like some of the lesser known cuts on the album as well. Obviously wasn't one of his best pieces of work. I don't. Where was it in the?
It wasn't in the top 100. Well, I read that. I just looked at 200 albums and I looked at 100 albums. It actually went to 100. Is there like a next page?
It might have hit more in 87.
Yeah, but it came out in July. But Modern Woman, Matter of Trust, This Is the Time, a lot of good radio hits that you don't think about. Baby Grand, his duet with Ray Charles. So, The Bridge was Joel's last album to carry the Family Productions logo. So that fucking, to borrow Johnny's love of the Cowboys, that fucking scumbag Artie Ripp couldn't rip him off anymore. No pun intended, because he was done with that. So Big Man on Mulberry Street, which I always played on my jazz show in college. A lot of good like hidden gems. Code of Silence with Cindy, Running on Ice. Good album though. Not as bad as he makes it out to be, but you knew we weren't going to go without a Billy album, Andy, so just fucking deal with it. So there we go. So there's some of your big albums from 1986. All right, the Grammys, which was stuff that came out in 1985. The award ceremony was February 26th, the day after Dr. G's 13th birthday. And in honor of your birthday that weekend, Dr. G, Kenny Rogers hosted the Grammys just for you. So, We Are the World won Record of the Year. I think that was no surprise to anybody. No jacket required. We just talked about one album of the year. We Are the World won Song of the Year. And the Best New Artist, Sade. You know why? Because she sang Ravishing Rick Rude's theme song. That's why she was Best New Artist. The Video Music Awards, which came out in 1986, that September. It was hosted by Downtown Julie Brown. God, I loved her. Mark Goodman, Alan Hunter, Martha Quinn, and Dweezil Zappa. Dire Straits and Aha with the most nominations with 11. Aha won 8 awards. The Video of the Year was Money for Nothing by Dire Straits, which means nobody cared about the lyrics, as everybody cries about them now. Apparently nobody cared back then. Best Male Video, Addicted to Love by Robert Palmer. Best Female Video, How Will I Know by Whitney Houston, and Money for Nothing won Best Group Video. And for the first time, guys, and we'll talk about this from here on out, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame opened in Cleveland, Ohio. Originally, listen up, Andy Atherton. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was originally going to be in San Francisco. But Dr. G, who spoke up and told him to put it in Cleveland?
I don't know.
Somebody you know. Somebody we know. Did an album that year called The Bridge. Andy Atherton. Billy Joel he was on the committee, and he told the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame committee, do not put it in San Francisco. It'll be too expensive and no one will go. Put it in Cleveland, where Alan Freed was. So your first class in 1986 of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was a lot of heavyweights that, deserve to be in first. Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, James Brown, Ray Charles, Sam Cooke, Fats Domino, the Everly Brothers, Buddy Holly, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, and Sam Phillips, the guy who ran Sun Records. Duh. Bob Geldof, that June, got an honorary knighthood in recognition of Live Aid. And speaking of Metallica, a turning point here, on September 27th, a tour bus carrying them in Sweden killed their bass player, Cliff Burton. And I remember my brother being – in terms of music deaths, for my brother, now I usually refer to my brother because he was – my brother Chris, because he was the big metalhead in our family. Like I've said in the past, my oldest brother was the arena rock guy. My sister's the pop fan, and my brother was the metalhead. And he still says to this day that still the most crushing death for him is still Randy Rhoads. But this was close if you were a metalhead. Cliff Burton was apparently an amazing bass player, and he died. He got crushed by the bus in this accident in Sweden. And apparently, from what he remembers reading in like Hit Parader and Circus, Metallica almost ended the band. It was like almost John Bonham-ish. And in the end, they obviously got Jason Newsted. But that couple of years between Master of Puppets and their next album, there was a lot of growing pains with Metallica. So
yeah, I remember. I don't know if it was on the Year and a Half of Life of Metallica tapes that I had, but Kirk Hammett, I think Cliff was sleeping in his bunk actually.
Yep, he did. It was on the Behind the Music.
Okay, yeah, that's what it was. I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was on the Behind the Music. He actually slept in the bunk Kirk Hammett was supposed to. They lost. Cliff Burton won the bet, which is kind of sad. And apparently, James Hetfield wanted to beat the shit out of the bus driver or some nonsense. I don't know. Anyway, sadly, Cliff Burton passed away, and of course, they would do tryouts, and Jason Newsted would become the new drummer or the new bass player for Metallica.
Flotsam and Jetsam.
Flotsam and Jetsam. Mm-hmm. And that is it for music in 1986. So, guys, from here on out, we will have a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame class to be able to talk about.
There you go.
There we go. And that is it for music. To wrap things up on this episode of The Year in Pop, let's go to the big screen, Andy Atherton. What came out in 1986?
All right. Well, let's start with the Academy Awards, the 58th annual holding of that ceremony on March 24th of 1986. Your hosts were Alan Alda, Jane Fonda, and Robin Williams. I think they wanted to add a little more life into the show. With these movies, though, I don't know if you could. The best picture was Out of Africa. Your best director was Sidney Pollack for Out of Africa. Your best actor, William Hurt, Kiss of the Spider-Woman. Geraldine Page is your best actress for The Trip to Bountiful. Don Amici wins for Cocoon, your best supporting actor. Best supporting actress, Angelica Houston for Prizzi's Honor. I remember seeing that in the theater. Your best original screenplay was Witness, and your best adapted screenplay was Out of Africa. Your most nominations were The Color Purple and Out of Africa with 11. And your most wins, Out of Africa with 7. Honorary Oscars go to Paul Newman and Alex North that year. Let's talk about some of the movies before we get to the top 10 that were released in the year 1986. We had The Clan of the Cave Bear, Iron Eagle, which is apparently Johnny Lawrence's favorite movie if you watch Cobra Kai, Troll, Down and Out in Beverly Hills, Youngblood, one early Rob Lowe, Hannah and Her Sisters, The Delta Force, Quicksilver, Wildcats, 9.5 Weeks. Here we go, Scott. Pretty in Pink. One of the several 80s movies.
Love Pretty in Pink. Mm-hmm. Great movie. Mm-hmm. Scumbag James Spader in that.
Cult classic Highlander. Gung Ho, The Money Pit, Lucas. Critters, a very campy horror movie.
There's a guy in our department that loves Critters. It's like one of his favorite movies. One of his favorite horror movies. He loves Critters.
Short Circuit, Cobra, which we talked about on an episode of Blockbuster Rewind.
That's a Dr. G movie. You must have loved Cobra.
I thought it was terrible. It was a terrible movie.
No Sly movie in the 80s is terrible. Come on.
Well,
Dr. G, do you remember Cobra?
I had anything but Sly in it. I was watching at that time. So. I mean, if I probably went back and I haven't watched it in a long time. If I probably went back and watched it now, maybe I'll have a different opinion. But at that time, I loved it.
Yeah. Space Camp, Back to School. There you go. The great comedy. Legal Eagles, Labyrinth, Running Scared, Ruthless People, Big Trouble in Little China, The Great Mouse Detective, Club Paradise. I love Club Paradise. Very, very underrated comedy with Robin Williams, Eugene Levy, Rick Moranis, Andrea Martin. Maximum Overdrive, based on the Stephen King. Howard the Duck. One Crazy Summer, another fun comedy. The Transformers, the movie. You Got the Touch. Armed and Dangerous.
You really glazed over Howard the Duck.
Oh,
Howard
what?
the Duck is one of the worst fucking movies ever. And it has a very comical form of bestiality because Leah Thompson has sex with a duck. So.
Well, he's an anthropomorphic duck.
Anthropomorphic.
There you go. Stand By Me. The Fly. There you go, Scott. Where's The Fly rank on in terms of horrors?
The first Fly is actually very good. Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. It's gross, but it's a solid. I mean, it's a remake of a movie from the 50s, but Scream Factory did a great Fly set that's got 3 of the movies from the 50s. And then this movie and The Fly 2, which is not as good. But it's up there. It's a solid horror sci-fi movie. Definitely. It's Jeff Goldblum. There's really nothing bad about it, you know?
And you have Blue Velvet. Here's a movie that I saw actually in school. In high school, I remember we watched this in a film class. The Name of the Rose. Starring Sean Connery.
Sean Connery.
It's actually a very good movie. I would recommend it. The Color of Money, which was, with Tom Cruise. Jumping Jack Flash. Starring Whoopi Goldberg. Peggy Stu Got Married. Heat. Hoosiers, one of the, a lot of people's opinion, one of the greatest sports movies of all time. An American Tail. Here we go. Here's a movie that we will never, ever see again. It was a reissue of Song of the South that year. The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy. I want the knife.
Love that movie. Saw it on a class trip.
The Three Amigos came out. Little Shop of Horrors, great. I probably talked about this on other shows. I was in Little Shop of Horrors senior year of high school. I played the plant, Audrey too. Platoon also came out that year. And here's your top 10 in terms of domestic box office gross. At number 10, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Bueller.
I was going to say Crickets. Bueller. We talked about it on the last Making Mount Rushmore, right, Johnny?
I think I said enough.
Yes. I almost thought we broke up inside This Week in the NFL, whatever, that episode. Yes, it is a great movie from the 80s. The Conscience of Place to Be Nation. Steve Willie joined me on that episode of Laugh in Theater. So if you're a Ferris Bueller fan, please go back and check out that show. Number 9, Ruthless People. That was, I believe, Danny DeVito, Bette Midler, and Judge Reinhold were in that movie. At number 8, The Golden Child, which we've talked about. Number 7, Aliens.
I can't believe you guys said you liked that. Golden Child was horrible.
It's Eddie. I gave Eddie the benefit of the doubt on a lot of crap in the 80s. It was in the 90s when I stopped giving him the benefit of the doubt of his movies, but in the 80s it was Eddie. I was a sucker for anything.
Aliens, which, yes, I'll admit, it's on my shame list. I hope to do it before, COVID is over, is watch all the Alien movies.
Your shame list is pathetic. Your shame list is like everything.
It is not everything. It's getting better.
Aliens. You could argue that Aliens is better than Alien. It's an amazing sequel. I love Alien, but it's an amazing sequel. Talk about good horror. Definitely is.
I glanced over it, but Back to School was number 6 that year. Steve Bennett stopped by last year.
We have to talk about Back to School for a minute.
Yes, we're going to stop for a minute. Say it!
Because my favorite, I don't think there's anything funnier than the commercial with Thornton Mellon when he's talking about the tall and fat. What is it? When at the zoo, do the elephants throw you peanuts?
Do you look at a menu and say, okay?
Okay. That movie, that is unheralded Rodney Dangerfield humor, that movie. Unheralded. Mm-hmm. When he's sitting in the hot tub, would you like to straighten out my Longfellow? Hey, ladies, I'd like to tame your shrew.
Tremendous.
God, so good.
Love it.
Do you read lips? Fuck you.
You read lips? Fuck me. Fuck you.
Here you go. Part of your current Pop Goes the Classics series, Scott. Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home.
Yes. Excellent. I'll say nothing. Check out the Pop Goes the Classics with Tech and I. It's very good.
A movie that I guess a lot of people are rewatching now because of the success of Cobra Kai, The Karate Kid Part 2, which I barely remember. The movie.
Oh, such a good movie. It's actually a good movie. Yeah. Gloria Love.
I enjoyed it. I mean, it wasn't as good as the first, but I enjoyed that. Then when they went to Part 3, that's when it sucked.
No, I like 3 better than 2, man. I'm in the minority, Dan.
Oh, I like 3. Thomas Ian Griffith.
Really?
Fucking scumbag. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like 3. Mike Barnes.
I don't like 2 too much.
Mike Barnes is great value Johnny Lawrence. But he was good, though. He's a good asshole in that movie.
Yeah, 3 is better.
I like 3.
Number 3 is Platoon. We talked about that's the Charlie Sheen, Tom Berenger.
Oliver Stone.
Mm-hmm, Oliver Stone directed movie. Mm-hmm. Number 2, Crocodile Dundee. Made Paul Hogan a household name.
I never know what my opinion is of this movie. I don't know whether I like it or don't like it. I'm very weird on this movie and the sequels.
It's been a long time since I've seen it. It's, it's fish out of water kind of movie. Linda Kozlowski, who actually
he ended up marrying him from this movie.
Lived in Fairfield. Actually,
she did.
A fun fact: my girlfriend lives 3 doors down from that house. What do they call it? They refer to it in the neighborhood as the Kozlowski house.
Oh, that's funny. That's pretty funny.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and the number 1 top-grossing film of 1986, it made the Mount Rushmore of 80s action movies, starring Tom Cruise and Anthony Edwards, Kelly McGillis, Meg Ryan, Top Gun. Mm-hmm. And Val Kilmer, that's right, Rick Rossovich. Yeah, lots of even Tim Robbins in a very small part.
Yep,
Tom Skerritt, Michael Ironside. Yep. Take Me to Bed or Lose Me Forever. Yeah.
I feel the need. Mm-hmm.
Correction, it made some people's mouth. Jeez, not 86, great year for sports, but not my favorite for movies. Rough one, man. I left the story on the table because I don't want to pile on Cowboy, but there was a guy I used to work with. He was a real negative, wet blanket type. Every time you ask him something, he could never say no. He would always say negative, Ghost Rider, negative, Ghost Rider. Just so some other guy's like, what's with the dude? I'm gonna leave the names out. He's like, what's with dude? Why is always what's with that negative Ghost Rider? I said, it's just some stupid thing from Top Gun. He's like, oh, figures, only douchebags like that movie. I really couldn't argue with him. All right.
Oh God.
I'll ride your wing anytime.
Yeah. Enjoy Top Gun. Yeah.
Johnny will take a pass at that one.
86, yeah, not a good year for movies for me. Sports, yes.
Yeah, good soundtrack though, right, John? Do you at least agree there with the soundtrack or no?
Yeah, pass on that too.
Yeah, because it gives you the images of the movie. Well, fun movie. There's a sequel coming out. Maverick. Don't exactly agree with the choice they cast for Goose's son.
Yeah, hopefully it gets delayed to 2025. 2035.
Well, it gets delayed permanently. Oh.
All right.
That's
more.
good.
You're going to go on Quibi, which actually just went out of business.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, that's going to bring an end to Year in Pop 1986. But let's go around the horn and say what shows or social media presence everybody can direct people to. We'll start with my co-host, Scott Criscuolo. What do you got to direct people to?
All the feeds I mentioned earlier. Follow me on Twitter at PTBPodfather.
Mm-hmm. Dr. G.
You can follow me at Dr. G PTB. We have the NWA Saturday special every Saturday morning. You get to wake up and have your cup of coffee and enjoy Scott and I going at it, and usually Scott ripping AEW even though we're talking about NWA, but we always have a good time.
Yes.
And listen to the NWA Rock and Roll that was released last week, and it is July 1985. It's a great show. You'll enjoy it. If you love Crockett, you'll really enjoy this. If you've never watched Crockett before, you'll want to watch it after listening to this.
All right, Johnny.
All right, at JadeI7 on Twitter, and the North-South Connection. Got a couple shows there. ECW, Extreme Three-Way Dance with the King and the Queen of the pods over there. And also this week in the NFL, I'll have some company with my giant misery, as I'm sure the Patriot fans will be equally as miserable. So that should be interesting to hear. And then maybe we'll have a Cowboy fan come on as a guest, and he could be miserable too.
I'd be honored.
Throw a Falcon fan in there, Jeff fan. We'll have misery when our teams here plays the nation.
Plenty of misery to go around. Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, God.
The Giants should be in first place with the games they've blown. That's the sad thing, and that's how bad that division is.
You might still be in first place with the Fundos.
It's pretty much.
First time a 6-win team wins a division. You never know. All right. As for me, check out all the shows here on the Place to Be Nation Pop feed, but especially Pop Goes the Classics, the other Pop Goes the Classics series, the Disney one that I'm doing with Miranda and Steve Riddle. Our latest episode came out. We did Saludos Amigos and the Three Caballeros. It was a lot of fun. And then we have a new episode coming very soon, Make My Music, Fun and Fancy-Free Melody Time, Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Kind of going through the chronological, and these were the last of the kind of compilation anthology films made up of a bunch of shorts and not a full anime feature, so check those out. Don't forget Making Mount Rushmore drops every other Monday with different guests every episode, so check those out. Laughing Theater will be back. Actually, Glenny Bun is coming by. Glenn Butler.
There we go.
Somebody that we miss dearly, in both on the site and on the feed. Hopefully he'll come back to the walk eventually, and the Spectacular may make an appearance here and there. But Glenny is stopping by. We're going to watch Mel Brooks' Robin Hood Men in Tights. I'm really looking forward to that. Glenn is a great dude and really a joy to do a podcast with. Scott, you joined me, Shiflet, and Eels. We were on Blockbuster Rewind. We talked about the Scream franchise. A tremendous show. Also, check out everything else that we got going on. Check out Maddie's show, Piece of the Action. Check out Diamond Conversations. It was a thing on TV. All kinds of great stuff. Don't forget, check out all the other feeds, like Scott mentioned, the PlayStation Wrestling Network, home of many great shows, the North-South Connection, and the Jenny Position feeds as well. Don't forget, like us on Facebook, join the Place to Be discussion group, and visit the site. Articles, fresh takes, all the pods are there for all the feeds, so check it out. So, I want to thank everybody for listening, and I want to thank Scott Criscuolo, my co-host, as well as Arsenio D'Amato and Dr. G. George Ribellino. I am Andy Atherton. Thank you for listening to Year in Pop, and we'll see you in 1987. Take care, everybody.
Oh God.